Caroline, Willy, D-mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Happy Wednesday. Titans finished up first day of mandatory minicamp yesterday. We'll be back out on the field for practice in just about 30 minutes. We heard from Nick Holtz just a bit ago, so we'll react to some things that Nick Holtz had to say. We'll also hear from a player. I've not heard which, so a nice little sense of mystery to start off your Wednesday, right? Willy Donick is here. Willy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, It's settling into the summer schedule here, and a lot of interesting analysis, if you want to call it that, for a football practice in shorts in June.
Well, it is football practice in shorts and overreact to its season.
Yep, no question.
And I think the important thing to remember about this point in the offseason is it's really easy to say, well, I don't care, it's just mandatory minicamp, which some of these things might matter. This experience matters, especially in a new coaching staff with a new offensive system and a new defensive coordinator, just a lot of newness across the board. And there are a lot of things that you can chalk up to and say, it's June. It's going to be okay. And we'll get more into it, but everything that I've read, all of the reports, everything that I have heard, of course, obviously we can't be out at practice because practice happens in the middle of our show and we're not able to be there. But everything that I've read said that Will Levis didn't have the best day. That's not something that I'm going to freak out about today. That's not something that I'm going to say, oh, well, season's over. Will Levis stinks. First overall pick in the draft, Carson Beck, you are now a Tennessee Titan. Like, I can't get to that point that far. But I can say today's not a great day. Yesterday wasn't a great day for Will Levis. First day of minicamp, new offense, getting used to new receivers. You want to see a little bit of, improvement being made. It's not nothing, but it's not the biggest thing in the world. T'Vondre Sweat not being out at practice yesterday, I don't think that I can just say, don't care at all, because he was a little bit of a red flag once the Titans drafted him in the second round. And the fact that he hasn't been able to be out on the field, there's plenty of time for him to get healthy and get back out on the field, but he hasn't been yet. So these things are really easy to say, don't care, it's June, it's minicamp. It's not everything, but it's also not nothing.
Yeah, it's important. Every practice is important. Everything you do to build a team is very important. But at the same time, I do think sometimes the hyper-analysis of where they are right now is, whether, the Levis was sharp in the scrimmage yesterday, that in the big picture, it's one day. Now, if it's a theme, I think you file it away and you watch to see, does this continue on into the preseason games, into the regular season? That's the process, right? But I think sometimes we try to have these hard takes after a practice in June, and if you're just listening along for one day, you might think that it's impending disaster or something like that. So I just
and it could be
try
a
to keep
disaster.
Well, or it
we
could
don't
be
know.
It
Or
could be the
wonderful.
start of a great story of great improvement.
Exactly.
That's why I think snapshots are dangerous. I try to keep perspective and just look at the process, but at the same time, I'm going to keep reminding people that the expectations for this team are low, that it's a rebuilding team. I'm not expecting them to come out firing and having a perfect in-sync season in the first year of a new head coach, even with all the money they spend in free agency. They are not expected to do well. So my bar is set accordingly.
And just because the expectations aren't high. Nobody thinks that the Titans are going to be a Super Bowl contender. I think we can go ahead and get that out of the way and say the Titans are not winning the Super Bowl this year. Be comfortable with that. But it doesn't mean that the Titans can't show improvement. I do think that the result, obviously, it matters. The wins and losses matter. That's what matters in this league. But the process also matters. Because what do we talk about the most? More than anything, Will Levis. Will Levis's development. Will Levis's improvement. That's all a process, because Will Levis's improvement and what Will Levis can become, what Will Levis shows us this season, will show us how good the Titans can be moving forward. So important things to keep in mind. We'll continue to keep you updated with all of the reports from practice. We'll continue to break down reports from practice yesterday, some of our takeaways, what's a big deal, what's not a big deal, what do we have questions about, what do we want to see today if maybe yesterday wasn't a great day. But I want to start with this. A lot of talk about Treylon Burks in this offseason, because this seems like it's the year. This is the put up or shut up year for Treylon Burks. If you can't stay healthy, if he can't stay on the field, if he can't be impactful for this football team, I don't think there's a space on this football team for Treylon Burks. And that stinks, right? Because his first overall pick, traded A.J. Brown and drafted Treylon Burks. Like, the vision and the role for Treylon Burks is carved out for Treylon Burks if he wants it, if it is his for the taking. Practice yesterday, and Trevor Matich was out on the practice field yesterday. I always say I defer to Trevor Matich on all things offensive line. I defer to D-mase on all things wide receiver. But like I said, we're not able to be out there. So Trevor Matich was out there, and he was watching Bill Callahan, the offensive line. He was also watching Treylon Burks. And Trevor Matich joined Jared's show yesterday and kind of gave a breakdown on what he saw from practice, what he liked, what he didn't like. But what did he see from Treylon Burks?
What did you think of Treylon Burks, the wide receiver, and Treylon Burks, the gunner on the punt team? Let's start with Burks, the receiver.
Ouch. I've got to tell you, this is just a snapshot, right? It was you and I were out there, Jared, one day watching him in practice. It was helmets only, not full pads, but there were plenty of routes that were being run full speed and being contested by defenders. But those weren't the routes that worried me so much about Treylon Burks. It was the ones that were not contested, that they were running against air, that they were working on techniques on breaks and things like that. And in this one snapshot, Treylon Burks, I would cut him today if I was the coach because of the way he practiced. I mean, one drill that they did was a short in route where there was a big old blocking dummy, and they had to run up about 5 yards and then make a little move and then cut straight across the field to the inside, and the quarterback could throw him the ball there about 5 yards downfield. Well, the other veteran receivers, the young rookies trying to make the team, they saw the play through. They came off the ball hard. They broke hard to the left or to the right, depending on the direction they were going. They would catch the ball, look the ball in to secure it as if they were about to get hit, and then make a move and turn upfield before they would lose their mental focus. Whereas Treylon Burks would come off the ball hard, make a good cut to the left, and then when the ball approached, he'd just pull up. He'd catch it, lackadaisically start to pull it in to secure it, turn and jog up the field a few steps. And he just did that over and over again. When it's not full speed, you still need to have mental focus as if it's full speed. The habits of most of the other receivers there were, even if it wasn't full speed physically, mentally they were finishing plays. Treylon Burks mentally wasn't finishing plays. He was stopping as soon as he possibly could and then slowed down and just jogged to the rest of the way. I am disgusted at how he practiced as a receiver today.
Awfully strong words from Trevor Matich and Stillman and company yesterday. He was disgusted. He said, if I coached that team, I would cut him today. It's never been a question of if Treylon Burks can be an NFL football player. Of course he can. He's got the talent. He's got the ability. We've seen, that's why he was a first-round pick. Is it because he has the raw talent and ability? The question that we've been talking about, D-mase, is how badly does he want it? That clip right there, that evaluation from Trevor, and granted, that is Trevor's evaluation, that is one person's evaluation of one day of practice, but that concerns me. If the question is, how badly does Treylon Burks want it? It sounds like the effort practice yesterday doesn't sound like he wants it very badly.
Okay, this is not personal. I'm not attacking anybody else. I'm not going to attack anyone because when I heard that yesterday, and then I listened to it again this morning, I was going to respond from an emotional standpoint, but then I had to sort of text a few people to see, okay, what was it? So I had to make sure that, am I getting a little bit too too far ahead of this thing. And when I had the conversation with them, I reevaluated what I was going to say, because I was just going to come here and go the hell off. I really was, because that's irresponsible. It's not. I'm not laughing in this situation. On Trevor, on anybody else, period. I was going to go off because it's irresponsible.
Irresponsible of him to say that?
Yes, because I'm gonna give you these words that he said. And I like Trevor. Trevor, again, like if I wanted to know something about offensive line, if I wanted to know something about just football in general, Trevor, I would go to Trevor. He's been in the game a long time. He understands the game. But it's irresponsible when you say just a snapshot. What does just a snapshot to me means? What does just a snapshot to y'all mean? Tell me.
A very small.
Okay, small. First time out. What does that mean? That's self-explanatory. The words pretty much says what it is. First time out. Snapshot, first time out. And then in saying that, you say I would cut him. Okay, this is your first snapshot, your first time out, and then you said you would cut him? You got to be kidding me. Seriously. That's to me. This is only me. Jared probably didn't find it irresponsible. You probably didn't find it irresponsible. Willie probably didn't find it irresponsible.
No, I think it is irresponsible to say you would cut a guy after one practice.
I am just saying, look, for me, now Willie agree with that part, so I can add Willie into this. But for me, that was irresponsible to say, because it's not like you've been out there the whole time since they've been practicing from day one to now. Again, I get that it was a snapshot. I get it. You know how many times I caught the damn ball and just walkthroughs and he even said it like it wasn't full speed. And then he said, well, he wasn't getting the mental reps. How do you know he's not getting the mental reps? It's not full speed. Some guys, if it's not full speed, some guys may go full speed, boom. But if it's not full speed, then it's not full speed. I'm not going to harp over that. Now, if this was 7-on-7 and he caught a pass, or this is team and he caught a pass and then jogged, we got a problem now. We have a serious problem. But if it's 3/4 speed, half speed, or quarter speed, catch the ball, tuck it in, go get up the field. Make a move, make a football move, meaning catch the ball, make a football move up the field. That's all you got to do. 1 or 2 steps. That's all you got to do. That's what we were taught. And when it's not full go, coaches ain't monitoring you whether you're going 100 miles per hour. If the coach just said, this is not full speed, people. This is 3/4 speed. This is a quarter speed. It's not full speed. So in your mind, coach is not looking at him, oh, he's slacking. No, he's not. You just told him it wasn't full speed. Now, if we have this problem when it's full speed, then okay, we can let's have a conversation. But this is not the conversation. Okay, it's not. So that take to me, and I'm saying only me, it was irresponsible to say. You know why? Because many people would just listen to, I will cut his ass.
Exactly.
That's what they would hear.
That's why I think you got to be careful.
That's why it's irresponsible. Because this is training camp.
That's a shock jock comment.
If this is training
camp, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
just like saying you think Jim Corbin's on the hot seat because they lost in the first. It's just shock jock.
Exactly. Those are trigger words to people. Those are words that excite things. I cut him. Oh, people want to see now. It's Trevor that said that. Oh my God, because Trevor he's
got credibility.
He has credibility. Yeah. What he says hold weight. And it's true. So when Trevor says, oh, I would cut him, you know how many people are listening to that now? Oh, my goodness, what is Traylon doing in practice? He's doing what the coaches are asking him to do. He's going 3/4 speed. I can't tell you whether mentally he was into it or not. I can't tell you that. I'm not in his head, and no one else can tell you that either. Go ask that man, were you in it mentally? Ask him. He'll tell you. Yes or no, I was. Or he'll say, hey, coach said it was 3/4 speed. Coach said it was half speed. Coach said it was quarter speed. That's what I was doing. Mentally, I'm slowing my mind down, and I'm doing things. I'm catching the ball, taking a step up the field. I don't have to sprint 30 yards. I don't have to sprint 10 yards. Some guys sprint, some guys don't. I guarantee you, because I go through X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, just about every day in the morning. And Jim Wyatt puts up excellent content. TD puts up excellent content. I guarantee you, if I go through all of that content that they pulled up, that they put out there, I guarantee you I can find one snapshot at every one of those receivers, running backs, defensive linemen, going 3/4 speed. When the coach says 3/4 speed, I can pull that out. Y'all want me to do that? I can do it. I can do it just to show you that this is not a big deal whatsoever. And I am not going to let anyone else make this a big deal, because unless you played that position and unless you've ran those routes, they run about 200 routes per day, probably more than that. So when the coach says it's 3/4 speed, damn it, that's what it is. And mentally, I'm slowing my mind down to 3/4 speed. It's not like I'm not doing the things that the coaches are asking me to do, because I am. But I'm slowing my mind down to 3/4 speed, and we're going from there. Some guys may go a little bit faster. That's just the nature of it. Some guys just catch it, take 2 steps, boom. All right, getting back to the huddle. But in no way am I going to make this a big deal about Treylon Burks catching the ball when it's not full speed and taking 2 or 3 steps up the field. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. And if anyone else tries to make it a big deal, I'm going to shut you down each and every time, because that right there. Now, we could talk about everything else. Mm-hmm. We could talk about the other stuff. But that, hell no, that wasn't a big deal. It's not. And I'm not going to let anyone make it a big deal. To me, that was just irresponsible, because what Trevor says holds a lot of weight. A lot of weight. So that's why I'm saying, if Trevor was just some, as Jared said, some Scarboni or Scarbini, then I wouldn't care. That was his. It is. But what Trevor says holds weight. So to me, only me, that was a bit irresponsible for you to say, because again, people are just going to pick up on, I cut him. They're not going to pick up. You can say all the nice stuff you wanted to say around, I cut him. You know what they're hearing? I cut him. That's all I'm hearing.
Let me weigh on this, too, because I heard the comments. It's interesting. I listened to it right after I listened to Nick Holtz give his press conference this morning. Teron followed up with a series of questions on Treylon Burks. Nick Holtz, maybe he got caught wind of the microscope that Treylon was under yesterday and compensated. I don't know. He had nothing but great things. The, quote, attitude and effort for Burks has been an A+, is what he said this morning. So Nick Holtz did not echo what Trevor said. So in a big picture,
I expect him to echo what Trevor said.
Okay, say whatever. We can say whatever we want, but that's his coach. That's his coach. I will say this: Treylon Burks is going to be under the microscope until he breaks through and plays well. Everybody's going to be questioning everything about him. I will say this though. Up until he injured his knee in the preseason scrimmage in Minnesota last year, everybody was gushing about Treylon Burks. Everybody couldn't say enough great things about Treylon Burks. In the media, the Scrubinis, all the analysts, everybody was saying everything about Treylon Burks. It was great. I never heard anybody say Treylon Burks dogs it in the drills. Did you guys? Is that the first time? That's the first time I've ever heard anybody say Treylon Burks dogs it every day in the drills. Okay, now I'm willing to grant Trevor that, because I think Trevor is a great stickler for detail. He studies things. I respect him a lot as a football analyst. It may not have been Treylon Burks' best practice yesterday. I'm willing to grant him that. But as D-mase said, sometimes all drills are not treated equally. Sometimes the coach might even tell you it's a 3/4 drill. All of these things, these are great points that D-mase is making. I'm just trying to pull back and say, this is, of all the things that are the problems with Treylon Burks, I've never heard anybody say he dogs it in the drills, and therefore he should be cut. I've never heard that before.
And listen, if people want because I understand it. When you're a first round pick, I don't understand like being a first round pick, but I understand like when people expect, right? There's this expectation of you as a player, and for whatever reason, you're not meeting it. I understand that part. But to, like, it's like to pick at every little thing that happens. No. I'm not cool with that. I'm not. I ain't even his damn teammate, and I'm going to protect him on this one. This one alone. The other stuff, no, because he has to prove it on the field. I've said that a million times. You said that. Willie have said that. He has to prove it on the field, and he has not done that. But this right here, oh yeah, we can go toe to toe. We can go because I'm gonna stand up for him because he's not gonna be able to say anything. And the minute D-Hop or Ridley say something, is what are they supposed to say? They're supposed to protect their player. They're gushing the problem, and I understand that. I have no doubt.
He's AJ Brown and T.O.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That stuff, okay, I can see. I understand.
Those are some dramatics, and I understand Calvin Ridley's perspective of protecting his guy. I do understand that. I'm not going to buy it. I don't believe it, but I get it. I get where he's coming from.
They're supposed to protect him. And listen, conversations, when they happen, you got to understand that. Are you giving me a snapshot of the conversation, or are you giving me the totality of the conversation? I'm sure Ridley was looking at, when that question was asked of Ridley, or right about that sort of, question or whatnot. I guarantee you, Ridley was thinking, is he T.O.? Is he Julio? Is he AJ? No. But he has the ability to be that guy. I look at Traylon, and I think size, strength, speed, yeah, he is comparable to those guys. I know guys that I played with that was comparable to T.O. or somebody else. That didn't mean they were T.O., but they had the comparable, like height, weight, speed. Like, T.O.'s doing this. You can do it too. There should be no excuse, okay? So we can compare height, weight, and stuff like that. And I'm sure that's what Ridley was doing. But he's supposed to protect his guy. I will protect my guy 100%. Now, we go back in the room, it's going to be a different deal. We need to talk. But I'm going to protect you because I'm not going to let them jump on you. In this situation right here, I have no dog in the fight with Traylon. But this one right here, I'm going to bat for him. I will go to bat for him 100%, and I would debate anybody else on this topic. Put him right in front of me, and we can debate it all day long. Because that right there is just nitpicking. That right there, if Traylon Burks had come off a 700-yard season, y'all wouldn't be talking about that.
But that's the thing.
I understand that.
He didn't.
I get it. But even if he didn't, don't make a story when it's not a story. That's all I got to say. Do not make a story when it's not a story. That is not a story. I'm not going to make it a story other than telling you, as much as I respect Trevor's analysis and everything else, I think what he said was irresponsible. Why? Because what he says holds weight, a lot of it. He's respected. So when I look and I see that, I think that's a little bit too far, because what that is clickbait. Only thing somebody's going to do is talk about cutting him. That's all they're going to hear. Oh, he dogged us, so cut him. That's what Trevor said.
I have some thoughts on this, so we'll get into that coming up next. And I know that you have thoughts on this as well. Again, Trevor Maddich was on Stillman & Company yesterday. After he was out at minicamp yesterday, he said that he thought that Traylon Burks' effort in practice was disgusting. He said he would have cut him after watching him in practice, not because of his ability, but because of the effort. I have some thoughts on that. I know you have thoughts on that as well. So we are right to your phones. We're to your phones early and all throughout the show. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Time to tell you about Loan Pronto. Imagine waking up this time next week and being 100% debt-free from credit cards, car loans, other personal loans that have those high interest rates that are eating up your monthly budget. Loan Pronto has the solution for you. It's the Equity Express line of credit. They can make it happen, and they can do it in a quick period of time. If you're a homeowner, your home's value is likely way up, especially in our listening area. Take advantage of that. You can use that to wipe out credit card bills, car loans. Get it down to zero. Start over. Get rid of those credit cards and use your home's equity to your advantage. The average homeowner using this program saves over $850 each month doing this. Now imagine adding $850 to your monthly budget. Does that sound good? Well, call Loan Pronto now. Find out more. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780. Or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, equal housing lender.
Now that you've got Traylon on the field and you've seen him, well, what are some things that he's done well, and then what are some areas for improvement?
He has exceeded expectations so far, and I know, being a first-round pick, he's kind of like a hot button issue a little bit with the media here. It seems like there's a lot of trailing questions. He has been unbelievable. His work ethic every day has been awesome. He's, vertical speed, his size, his strength has showed up nonstop every day. And so he's made some plays down the field. We'd like to see him. He had one yesterday down the sideline. We'd like to see him reel in. And so that'd be one of those things of, hey, when the big plays are there, you got to make them. But he's done excellent for us, and he's really been versatile, being able to play inside and outside. So he's actually been rotating it at all three spots. And, a lot of times he's been running with the ones because guys aren't there. And, it's the off season, so it's voluntary. So he's been doing a really nice job kind of plug and play in that standpoint.
How would you categorize the effort that you've seen?
I would say it's been excellent. He's been awesome. And attitude and effort for him would be A+ from us.
That was Titans offensive coordinator Nick Holtz on Traylon Burks. And of course, obviously, physicality, size, speed. Those are all things that we have never questioned about Traylon Burks. It is there. We saw it at Arkansas. We've seen flashes of it, whether it's in a game or training camp last season. And then, of course, TD's follow-up question about the effort in direct response to what Trevor Matich said on Jared's show yesterday. In a nutshell, basically said he was disgusted by his effort and would have cut him for his lack of effort in practice yesterday.
Okay, but let me ask you, have you ever heard anybody question his attitude or an effort? I haven't.
Well, it has. We talked about this. D-mase and I did a couple months ago. We questioned. We wondered how bad Traylon Burks wanted it, and that's the reason why what Trevor said stood out to me. Is it an unfair evaluation to say that he would cut him based off of one practice? I would agree. I think that is unfair to say I saw one practice and it was so bad that I would cut him. But Traylon Burks is still unproven, and we have questioned. I still question how badly does he want to succeed in this league. Like, if Trevor got up and said, I was disgusted by Jeffrey Simmons' effort in practice today, I would say, no, that's silly, because Jeffrey Simmons is a proven commodity in this league. I was disgusted by DeAndre Hopkins' effort in practice. That doesn't mean anything to me, because DeAndre Hopkins is a proven commodity in this league and for this team. Traylon Burks is not a proven commodity for this team or in this league. That we have questioned, how bad does he want it? What size is the dog in him? Where's the fire and the passion? Last year, I had all the encouragement in the world in off-season practices, in training camp. Traylon Burks stayed here all off-season and practiced and worked out with the Titans trainers, and he took the Cessna plane to be back for a voluntary workout. We talked to him at training camp, and you could see it in his eyes and the way that he spoke that he wanted it so badly. But obviously last season, and things weren't always the same since the knee injury, and I have questioned his want since then. That's the reason why it stands out to me.
Okay, let me bounce this off of D-mase. I think, this is my opinion, there's a difference in saying he dogs it in practice and he should be cut. Dogging it in practice, that's different than does he have the dog in him. To me, those are two completely different things.
In what way?
The dog in you is a natural trait, I believe, that cannot be taught. I think you either have that or you don't. I think that is different. I think you can not have the, quote, dog in you and still come to practice every day with a good attitude and you play hard. You have an effort. Some guys just have a different motor than other guys. I think those are two different things. I do think there is a question of whether Traylon Burks has the dog in him. Again, this is nuanced conversation. People are they may not process this information I'm saying in the same way. I'm curious what D-mase thinks, but I think there is a very big difference in having that element, that ingredient, where you're a dog and questioning a man's attitude and effort on the practice field. To me, those are two completely different things. Because Trevor would have you believe he just didn't care about what happened in the practice yesterday and should be cut. That's ridiculous.
Those two things are not the same. Effort and having a dog in you are not the same. They're just not. There are a lot of guys that just don't have that extra, but they give it 100%. They go out there and they don't slack. They do what they need to do. Dog doesn't, giving that extra effort doesn't equate or mean you have dog in you. That means that you're just giving your effort. You are doing what you're supposed to do. You're giving that extra effort. You're doing those things that you need to do to make yourself, a better football player. It doesn't necessarily mean, since that person's giving effort, he has dog in him. What we question about, and we don't know, is the want. It hasn't been something that has come out of that building. It hasn't been something that we've heard the coaches say, or we've heard other players like, does Traylon really want it? No, that hasn't been coming out the building. These are things that we want to know. Does he really want it? And these are legitimate questions. Does he really want it? But it's not something that has been, leaking out of the building or coming out of the building. Traylon really doesn't want it. Traylon really doesn't want it. And then we sort of,
it's just our question.
Yeah, it was our question.
Just a discussion that we had.
Do he? And it's a legitimate question, but it's not a question based upon what has been coming out the building. It's a question based upon his play.
What we have seen.
What we have seen, his play. Does he really truly want it?
And that, to me, falls under the same category of effort and practice. How badly do you want it? How hard are you willing to work for it? We weren't at practice. So I cannot say what Trevor's evaluation was what I saw or what you saw or what anybody else saw. That's a disadvantage of us not being able to be at practice. Trevor's evaluation was one person's evaluation from one day in practice. But I don't think that it's fair of us to have a conversation about how bad he wants it and then dismiss a report from somebody who played in this league questioning his effort. Now, Nick Holtz is not questioning his effort. And look.
And isn't that the person we should be like, okay, if he's not questioning, because he sure enough said about which I have, reached out, and several people have told me, yeah, that ball on the sideline, maybe he could have caught it or had an opportunity to catch it. So Holtz didn't have a problem with saying that. Like, listen, that's a ball that we feel he needs to catch. If he was trying to protect,
different.
Yeah, it's the same, because if he
effort,
was trying,
he should have held on to a catch.
No.
A little bit different. In my opinion,
what he's saying is he's being honest with you. Like, that's a ball that Traylon has to catch. More than anything, I care about that. If the head coach is saying, you know what, you only get so many of these opportunities, and you already you're fighting an uphill battle. That's a catch you got to make. Don't you think if this kid wasn't giving effort, they wouldn't hold back to say, listen. They would frame it in such a way that we would know that Traylon is not giving 100%. They wouldn't come out and say, well, he's not giving 100%. They wouldn't do that. Not many coaches do that. I don't think any coach.
Don't do dumb bleep that hurts the team.
But what he would have done or what he would have said was something that alluded to that. No, he didn't. He was asked about his effort. He says A+. He was asked about that. He talked about that ball on the sideline. That's a ball that Traylon should have caught. That's a ball that he has to catch. Why? Because he's in an uphill battle. He's fighting this battle uphill. It's no longer, if this was a first-year Traylon, he'll get it next time. But no, this is the third-year Traylon, where now you are fourth on the depth chart when you're talking about the three receivers, two outside guys in the slot, and then you come in. So when that happens, now things are going to be discussed a different way. Yes, a ball you should have caught. Why? Because you're the fourth receiver right now, and you got to find a way you elevate yourself from the fourth to the first, and you can't do it by balls that we feel you need to catch. You didn't catch them. The effort is there. We're not questioning your effort. We're questioning the ability to make that play or not. So if he was honest about that, I'm sure he would have been honest if Traylon was dogging it. He would have been honest. At least that's what I believe, based upon what he said, because not many coaches are going to get up there, especially a guy like Traylon who's sort of on that fence in a sense. They're not going to get up there and not tell the truth about them,
especially if it's an effort question.
Exactly.
To me,
if it's an effort question, yeah, that's more than anything.
That is when I think you pivot and you try to get away from the question rather than answer the question. If you know he's dogging it, you're going to let it be known. You're going to at least not answer the question. You're not going to give oh no, he's giving great effort. I don't think that I have not seen very many coaches do that.
This is a young coach.
I don't know. He hasn't had many press conferences. I don't know what his strategy was going in. I don't even know if he knew what Trevor said or didn't say. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he was asked the question, he gave the answer. But I have not seen a lot of coaches who think a guy's dogging it tell everybody he's giving an A+ effort.
No,
if he knowingly knows
that he's not. It.
Yes.
To my knowledge, to my experience, if that is indeed the situation, unless they just dislike the guy, they're going to couch it in a different way. They're going to try to skirt around a question, or they're going to answer it in such a way where, like I said, where it's obvious, like, yeah, something's going on with this kid. Like, it may be more than just play. It may be effort and all this other stuff, what's going on in the meeting rooms. But that's not the case. Now, we'll see moving forward. But again, to me, I will go back to what I originally said. If Trevor wasn't so highly respected in this business, then it's like, whatever. But he is. And when you say that, people are only going to pick up on that. I need to cut him. They should cut him. I would cut him. That's all they're going to hear. And that's all that's going to be replayed over and over. I will cut him. I will cut him. I will cut him. Off of one snapshot. That's all I'm saying.
And I don't think the Titans are going to cut
Traylon
Burks
no,
because of what Traylon Burks said. Or, excuse me, because of what Trevor Matich said.
They're not going to cut him.
No. But I go back to the reason why it stuck out to me is because it's not like this is the first time anyone has ever said anything, or this is the first time that there's ever been a negative news story about Treylon Burks. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of talking about it. I mean, Brian Callahan told us yesterday, he's a special teamer. He's the fourth wide receiver, and he is constantly comes up in conversation. But I do want to get into your thoughts on this and your reaction to what Trevor Maddich had to say, what Nick Holtz had to say, D-Mace's reaction to what Trevor Maddich had to say. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation. Dylan Texan says, it's like Allen Iverson said. We're talking about practice, and this ain't even real practice. Trevor's take was absurd. Here's Willy and I talked about this at the top of the show. Everyone is going to say anything negatives that comes out, whether it was a bad day in practice for so-and-so or so-and-so wasn't there or whatever. It's just practice. Who cares about it? And then if it becomes an issue in the regular season and during a game, that's when people get mad about it. But at that point, it's too late. So I understand that it's practice. I understand today is June 5th. I understand there's a lot of time before the preseason and before the regular season. I understand all of that. But this is not Treylon Burks' first offense.
Hey, I get that, but Trevor also said, and hopefully I am sort of quoting it right, because he said when it was 7-on-7 and team and stuff, he didn't see that in Treylon. Okay, if you didn't see it in 7-on-7, if you didn't see it in team, when they were going 3/4 speed, you saw it. Okay, all right.
Is that what he said? He didn't see it in 7-on-7?
Yeah,
7-on-7?
basically that's what he said. Go back and play the whole thing, the whole clip. He talks about team and 7-on-7 like he didn't. It wasn't evident in those practice, but when he got into routes on air, yeah, he saw it.
We do have some more from Trevor. We can play it. I didn't hear it. I'm not saying he didn't say it. I just don't remember that what he said.
I think that there are going to be questions
about
whether he can play. Like to me, the out of bounds is saying you should be cut and looking at a drill and an effort in a drill where we don't know all the points of emphasis of that drill. And like Derek says, it carries a lot of weight because Trevor is a very good football analyst, one of the best. We're lucky to have him on our station contributing the way he does. I think he's outstanding. But that was out of bounds. That doesn't change the fact that Treylon Burks is going to be under the microscope. He's got to fight his way through. He's got to prove he can play. But I haven't heard a thing. He's been here for a while now. I have not heard a consistent, he dogs it in practice every day. He dogs it in practice. That's not the reason he hasn't contributed. He obviously is having a lot of trouble staying healthy.
Yeah.
And connecting all the dots when he has been on the field, we haven't seen it, right? When he's flashed a little bit, but even when he's been on the field, he hasn't been a consistent threat. And there have been plays where you're like, man, he's close. He's down the field. He's open. Could he have had that? He could have had it. Or, that's the type of thing.
Yeah.
And to me, that's different than saying he dogs it in practice every day.
So basically, we've deduced it to, in 3/4 speed, we're going to fault him for that too. That's what we've come to. We've come to this with Treylon Burks, and I get it. Listen, if he's not producing on the field, then some of this stuff is warranted. But that right there that's what we're deducing this thing to, 3/4 speed and criticizing and critiquing 3/4 speed.
And the crux of the argument is we'll see what he does in the regular season because that's what matters. L'Jarius Sneed wasn't out on the practice field, and we'll get into that. I think that's just life with L'Jarius Sneed. Yeah. And if he can play on Sundays, then I don't care. I don't care what you do in practice. I don't care what you do on the sidelines or what you do in or out of the building. If you can produce on Sundays, then great. Treylon Burks hasn't been able to produce on Sundays. So that's why you got to nitpick what you can't have.
Of course.
We can't evaluate in regular season until we get to the regular season.
And listen, I fully understand that.
Yeah.
I get it. But if this is something that was prevalent throughout practice, 7-on-7, team, full speed, everything, and he's dogging it, okay, let's talk about this. But if it's just, as he said, 3/4 speed on air, some guys run full speed, When it's 3/4 speed, some guys don't. When it's 3/4 speed, you know what I'm doing? I'm going 3/4 speed. You know why? Because I'm running about 200 to 300 routes a day.
Yeah.
Nobody else runs as much as me. Nobody, not even the defensive backs. They don't run as much as we do as wide receivers, especially the top flight guys. So when I got a time or an opportunity to rest my legs, you know what I'm doing? Rest my legs, resting my legs. And if you haven't been in that position, you can't tell me a damn thing. That's the way I feel. If you haven't been in that position, I'm not talking about football, period. There's a lot of guys that have played football. But if you haven't been in that position, the receiver position, then I don't want to talk to you, because they run about 300 routes a day. And if I can get one period out of about 15 to 20 some periods, if I can get one period other than stretching, if I can get one period where I can go 3/4 speed, I'm doing that. It's about mental reps. That's what coaches say. We don't know if he was mentally getting that rep or not. We can't say that. We can't say, oh, I knew he wasn't thinking about it mentally. How do we know that? It's 3/4 speed. If I am getting the opportunity to not run fast, you know what I'm doing? Not running fast.
I want to get your phones on this coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-mase. You can purchase your tickets GrandP.com. As the race in station 1025 The Game has a special offer that's for a limited time. Use promo code GAME, G-A-M-E, for a 20% discount right now through June 16th. Caroline, Willy, D-mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and The Game Nashville app. We'll catch up with Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow here in 10 minutes. But first, want to get into your thoughts and reaction. Trevor Maddich on with Stillman & Company yesterday said he was disgusted by Treylon Burks' effort in practice yesterday. But want to get into your reaction, D-mase's reaction, our reaction, and your reaction as well. Indy Ben's coming for you, D-mase.
Okay.
What a surprise.
What a surprise is Indy Ben.
We didn't even talk about the Colts.
Yeah,
and here's Indy Ben texting
But I
in.
guess everything we talk about is sort of indirectly related to the Colts.
Yeah.
It can be. So.
Yeah, it's anything that's not positive Titans talk is just like cracked. in the
Exactly.
air.
Absolutely.
He says some people just don't want to accept the truth that Burks is a bust. D-Mase is one of those people, unfortunately.
Oh, my goodness. How do I respond to this?
Take a deep breath, D-Mase.
Yeah, because I was really about to say, shut your ass up. But no, I was kidding, Indy Ben. I'm kidding. We appreciate you calling and everything else in texting. We appreciate you listening to the show, really. If you've listened to the show, you know I am sometimes brutally honest about certain things. I have no reason to hold back on individuals. I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but I'm going to call it what I'm seeing. There hasn't been once on these airwaves that I've said Treylon doesn't need to, show his worth, basically. There hasn't been a time where I haven't said Treylon needs to show more. Hasn't been not one time. This right here, oh yeah. Indy Ben, if you want to keep on texting about this part right here, the sort of what Trevor said, we can keep on going back and forth because I've already established this other stuff around around the perimeter. Him having to play better, him needing to be healthy. We've discussed that stuff, and I think I've been on board with that, right? Hey, tell me if I haven't, if I've been fighting against y'all let me know. But each time that we talk about Treylon, I think all of us have this consensus about him. He needs to be better on the field. He needs to show up on game day. That hasn't changed, and it won't change until he starts to show up consistently on game day. I'm not going to change my stance. But a situation like this, I know it, I've been it, I lived it. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm not. It's because it's not. Is he a bust? No, he's not a bust at this point in time. Now, if he doesn't do anything, this year and they have to cut him, then yes, he is a bust. But until they cut this man, if they keep on continuing to give him opportunities to prove his worth, what they're going to give him an opportunity this year, then I'm going to reserve my right to say he's a bust. I want to see after this season because I know how this league is. You have some guys that excel very quickly. Jefferson, Chase, you can name them.
Randy Moss.
CeeDee Lamb.
But then you have other guys that it may take a minute for them to adjust. Nico Collins is one for sure. It takes him a minute to sort
Derek
of
Mason.
Exactly. If you want to go back that far, it's me. But I really don't put that on me. I put that more so on the
Derek Mason in
organization
the olden days.
in the coaches. I put that more so on the coaches than anything.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. I flat out came out and I've showed that I can play. Flat out, the first day I stepped on that field, I showed them that I could play. And then we went into preseason games. Y'all go back and watch those preseason games if you ever pull them up in 97. I proved my worth back then, too. So it was never a question whether I can play the receiver position. It was just those boneheads that were trying to figure out, should we put this guy in front of him or this guy in front of him? And then they finally realized that, damn, this guy can play. We got to throw him out there. But, again, it takes some guys a little bit longer than others. And right now, Treylon is at the end. This is the end. Exactly. If he doesn't prove it this year, he won't be here next year. So y'all don't have to worry about talking about Treylon next year. That's fact. That's truth, Indy Ben. He will not be here next year if he doesn't show anything. How am I delusional? Indy Ben, text. How am I delusional when I say that?
Chris in Lewisburg texts in and says, the whole Treylon Burks story since he was drafted has been unfortunate. Now relegated to the fourth receiver, trying him on special teams shows the new regime is trying to find a place for him. Unfortunately, I believe Burks is probably one more serious concussion away from ending his career. Now, it has been unfortunate.
That's
from
what I'm
the
worried about,
very
too,
beginning.
the concussion.
Yeah.
The concussions, I mean, the knee injury was obviously very scary, and it seems like the knee injury's been fine, but the concussions, he's been knocked out cold on the field twice.
Yeah.
Two very scary scenes in back-to-back seasons. So, yes, absolutely, that is a concern. And a lot of the misfortunes that have happened to Traylon Burks have been out of his control. He just got knocked out against the Eagles, and he held on to the ball while doing it. And the knee thing, unfortunately, it's a football injury. Those things happen. Those things are out of his control. But your best ability is your availability, no matter if it's your fault or not.
Sometimes your body is just not cut out. It just, and that is not, there's nothing you can do about that. But there are just players that happens to. And I think if he's perfectly healthy and out there, I think he could do some damage. But so I think we all agree. There's never been any question of where we think he is in his career. All of us agree on that, right? It's just when you're talking about little nitpicking things about a drill, that's over the line. That's not going to be why he succeeds or fails. It's going to be, can he stay healthy, and can now he fight his way through a deeper depth chart to find a role here and be a better player with basically a new quarterback, new coach, new coordinator, all of that stuff. The odds are stacked against him. I'm not gonna sit here and say he's poised to break out for a 1,000-yard season. I don't think D-mase is either. We don't know
if he's going to do it or not.
Yeah, that'd be great if he did. We'll catch up with Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on this, plus everything else that has come out from OTAs and minicamp so far. Jonathan Hutton on the other side. Caroline, Willy, D-mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Look at the time. Look at the time.
Look at the time. It is Hutton O'Clock. Noon on a Wednesday, so it is Hutton O'Clock. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mic and with Hutton Withrow joins us now. Caroline, Willy, D-mase. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Hut, appreciate you for joining us. It's only been one day of mandatory minicamp, and things are already getting spicy. Trevor Maddich went on Jared's show yesterday, and he said he was disgusted by Traylon Burks' effort. He said that after watching him in practice yesterday, he would have cut him based off of his effort. I don't know if you were at practice or not, Hutton, but what is your reaction to Trevor Maddich's evaluation of Traylon Burks at practice yesterday?
Well, full disclosure, and great to be with you guys. The schedule does not line up with the business of meeting for the sake of meeting on what I do on Zooms with
fun?
New York. So, I can't do that.
Meetings that could be emails?
Yeah, sure. Meet for the sake of doing, which we do, but sometimes we meet. I would love to be out there and see this effort because I don't know what to make of it, given that have you guys heard a clamoring of everyone saying this?
No. That was my point. No, not that specifically. Are there questions about whether he has the dog in him? So here maybe is a good place.
We've
to start
always
the
had that, Willie, right?
To me, it's something different to say he doesn't have that dog in him. To me, that's a trait that you're kind of born with. It's hard to teach that. I don't know that you can put a dog in somebody. You either have it or you don't.
But
I do think effort and practice every day, I think you can not have the dog in you and still be giving good effort. I don't think it's a reputation that he has with that daily, questioning the effort in practice.
I listen to what the coaches say, and they're actually – Callahan didn't mention his name in one of the very first interviews when he's rolling through wide receiver his core group. And now he's starting to do that. They're getting more questions about that. I know that other coaches are saying that his effort and his start has been great. I don't think they would go out of their way to praise that. And Mace, I believe you and I were talking a few weeks ago. Burks has been a big topic, and rightfully so. But I said, based on what they've added in free agency and the draft and what they haven't done, he's going to be playing special teams. I don't think that's a big surprise that he's working at gunner and working at other spots and will play special teams, given the fact he's fourth on the depth chart. If he moves up on the depth chart due to injury, which is the only way I foresee that happening, maybe we see him not play as many team reps. But that's how you have to be active on game days. One of the 48 is you're playing special teams. If you're the fourth or fifth receiver, I guess in this offense there could be 6 or 7 active, given how much they want to throw the football. But they're going to treat the running backs as receivers too. So the fourth receiver is absolutely going to play teams. I need to see it for myself to see a guy dogging it. But if that's the true description of what Maddich saw, and I have no reason not to believe him, if he's saying that from his own perspective. That's alarming given the fact that, he's been on notice and he's on a rookie contract at a position where there are players getting paid boatloads of money. Now's the time to turn it up, not down.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jonathan Hutton is with us.
But I don't want to judge. I'm not saying I'm all in on the dogging. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I know the track record isn't great, showing up out of shape year one. And here we are already talking about this. But again, the coaches are saying the opposite. So I'll go with what they're saying publicly, because they don't really – I don't think they've been BSing us on the public stance of some of these guys.
And that was the point that I made earlier, is if you tell me Jeffrey Simmons is dogging it, I'm either not going to believe you or I'm not going to care, because I know that Jeffrey Simmons is a proven commodity. It's the fact that this is year 3 for Traylon Burks, and we still don't know what he is.
Well, and right now we do, though. We know he's been surpassed, right? And we know who he was at Arkansas. I'll go back to that. I haven't seen examples of him doing the opposite of anything but playing hard whenever he was in the SEC. So I would stick to what the coaches want to use him and implement him in. And, they're not letting him speak yet to the media, which is intriguing. But he's learning a lot of different positions right now. Maybe that's part of it. And I don't know what period that Trevor Matich is talking about, unless he's talking about the entire practice, which is also alarming if that's what he's saying.
We'll talk with Jonathan Hutton, talking Tennessee Titans. Now, looking at this situation, Jonathan, what do you – because we're trying to figure out now, because Traylon's – he's on his last leg, and we all understand that. You know, he's had 2 years prior to this to figure it out, and it hadn't worked out for whatever reason. But what do you think needs to happen? Like, if you want to attach a number to it, how does this season needs to go in order for him to be back next year? Because I think if it goes the way it did last year or the year before that, then they're not going to bring him back. I don't care if he was their first-round pick. They're not bringing him back. They're going to move on. But what would be, you think, a sweet spot to say, okay, he's shown improvement. Let's at least, you know, give him that 5th year.
Mace, he needs to accept his role and then climb the staircase. Realize where he is on the depth chart and climb the staircase.
Hut, stop for a second. You know what? I was just thinking that this morning, that he has to be able to accept his role that he's in. Whatever role they give him, whether it be special teams or receiver or whatnot, he needs to accept the role, but then know that he has to move up within that role. He has an opportunity to move up. But go ahead.
And look at and his agent can help him in this area. Look at the reality of what the roster looks like next year based on wide receiver contracts currently. You know, you've got some 1-year contracts. You've got Hopkins, who wants the extension, wants to see a 2-year deal because he has no more guaranteed money on his contract. There's a lot of different factors right now that should motivate Treylon Burks on a rookie deal with an option to pick up a 5th year or get extended even. Again, he should have a mindset of, this is a contract year. I love players that are on contract years at any position. And he should be pissed off for greatness. That should be the motivation. And he's at a great position right now where the salaries are going higher and higher. And, you know, 2 years ago, this organization didn't want to pay A.J. Brown that type of money. You know, like there's plenty to reach out and grab. You can grab the brass ring if you're Treylon Burks. I just don't know where his head's at in terms of doing all of that. We haven't heard from him in that regard. But he has to he doesn't have to embrace. He just needs to accept where he is. Doesn't have to agree with it, but he may need to come to terms with it some. And I think with this coaching staff, if you're 4th on the depth chart in a wide receiver position, you're still going to be integrated into the offense on a weekly basis. You're a part of it. He needs to be available. He needs to be consistent and catch the balls that are in his wheelhouse that he did so well with KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. And he's going to be just fine. But it starts with being available, and it starts with the attitude on the practice field. And, again, just one practice observation. I wasn't there. I can't speak to it. But it doesn't sound like it's a glowing review by any means for a guy who is making headlines for working at gunner on a field across the way during a special teams period, when we're still waiting to see what he's going to do whenever they put the pads on.
Yeah, you're right about that, Hut. You know, he needs to accept where he is, but that doesn't mean he needs to stay where he is. So once he figures that out,
where he is, you're right. I mean, he's on a different roster, or he's Nick Westbrook-Akine. And no disrespect to Nick Westbrook-Akine, he stuck around with multiple coaching staffs, but that's not what Treylon Burks was drafted to be. He's not supposed to be a role player. This was a guy that last year was number 1 on the depth chart before Hopkins got here. Like that's this. Now we see how the philosophy and the mindset of the organization has really changed within the coaching staff, because now it's about, we're going to throw the football with a quarterback that can really sling it. And if we rein in the quarterback a bit, the passes should be in that intermediate range. That should be in his wheelhouse to strike. That should be the mindset of agent to player and then player to the field. That's what I want to see from Treylon Burks. I want to see the guy that I expected and the perception that I had of him from the SEC.
Now, we had a discussion yesterday about certain positions, and I relayed to the team that, you know, there's one position, there were a few, but one in particular, it may not look as a position of concern, but to me it is. I think the cornerback position, not because of the three guys that they're going to have that they project to be their starters, Awuzie, McQuarrie, and Snead. Not that. It's if one of those guys go down. Yeah. Then what does this team do? They've spent a lot of money on their two edge corners. The depth may not be there. So if one of those guys go down, and we already know what L'Jarius Sneed's issues are, the knee. Hopefully he can hold up another year like he did in Kansas City, play all 17 games. But we know the nature of this business. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to miss games. So are you as concerned as I am about the depth at that position?
I'm concerned with the NFL quality depth across the roster. But, yeah, I'm with you at corner. That's why I've said they need another offseason like they just had, another full offseason for me to really jump in and say, this is the team that's going back into contention. Because injuries are going to happen. The war of attrition they have lost the battle and the war the last few years in the war of attrition with health on the roster. And look, I mean, you're right about the depth. I could say that about several other spots too. And with the philosophy change as well, there's a lot of different factors into that. But they have improved significantly in the secondary going into the season. If they stay healthy, they're fine. If they lose one player, they're still fine. But there was a situation towards the end of last year where they've got 2 or 3 backups and then a backup to a backup rolled in there. And, we've got Trey Avery playing man on the outside. That's not a good sign for how the defense is going to fare in a crucial situation. If you're trying to lock down a defense, or as a defense trying to lock down the offense from going down the field and scoring last minute and giving up a big drive in the final 4 minutes of a game like that. That's the crucial part of the wins and losses of the league. And that, again, we just got done talking about the investment in wide receiver. The league's throwing the football, and I like what they've done. But what I haven't liked is the last few years where you're seeing the problems with the depth of the roster, and ultimately that can come back and play a factor. They need another full offseason to replenish what they don't have on that second and third tier. And the second and third tier right now there's no threat of any of those guys moving up, right? They need to replenish that through the draft and free agency with the idea that they can move up on the depth chart as guys come in and come out based on contract situations. They don't have that right now, and that's where they're really going to be hurt.
So yesterday we had Seth Walder on from ESPN, from the analytics department, and he was talking about how they arrived at the Titans being 27th in their power rankings right now.
Okay.
So we talked about a lot of different things. One thing that I thought was noteworthy, I asked him about what he sees as the combination of Pollard and Spears replacing an aging Derrick Henry. Because he was one that for a long time was saying Derrick Henry the last couple years for the Titans was still good, but there was quite a drop-off in especially the analytics part, the expected yards per rush. So I was curious what he would say about Pollard and Spears. He said the one thing that you have to make sure you know is that the defense will account differently when you don't have Henry. Obviously, Henry was not as productive, but also they were still stacking the box against him. Oh, yeah. But he didn't really have a great outlook for Pollard. And one of the things that jumped out to us, he said, once you've had a bad injury, odds are you're not going to bounce back like you were before the injury, which was a little ominous to me. He did say 2 years ago Pollard was an analytic darling, big time. Dropped off big time last year, but there was a pretty significant injury mixed in there. So what's your thought, because we haven't talked about it much, Pollard and Spears replacing Henry's production?
Well, I think what they're doing, the production itself from last year, quite frankly, just in the run game, I think early on they will run the football more than what we may expect. But I think the production is the combination of run and pass, Willie. And I think that also, while you may not account for one player with 8 men in the box, you can now rotate in either player or use both players and not be predictable and down and distance what you're going to do with the play call. I think that's also that needs to be factored in, which I don't know how they factor that in with a number until you have some result on the field or some evidence of what they're doing. But point being, if you've got Pollard and you have Spears on the field, but you also have Hopkins who's going to catch everything his way, and you have the ability to throw it to Calvin Ridley or Boyd, or even a Traylon Burks, maybe tight end. There are options within the offense now, as long as they distribute the football out of the backfield the way they intend to, and the way Callahan has talked about doing. They can do everything with both backs, and they could not do that in years prior. Maybe they could have. They just did not do that in years prior, where first and second down were Derrick Henry downs, third down was not, unless it was third and very short. I looked at that more than I look at, okay, how do they replace one player's production? I think the production gets replaced in the pass game, out of the backfield, in the flats, and on those intermediate routes, crossers and wheel routes out of the backfield with the running backs. Pollard's good in that area too, but he caught 50 passes, I believe. We know Spears can do that. He's certainly capable of that. He was drafted to do that. They have a young version of Pollard, and I think Spears, based on what they said even last year with the same general manager, they view him as a 3-down back. So if Pollard, for whatever reason, and he should, again, they've signed off on it, doesn't come back from the injury as well as what they may have predicted, Spears should be the guy. That's the long-term investment based on where they are on the roster and the position that he's playing. So I think we're seeing more of that San Francisco style to what we've always praised with Shanahan, or with, in some cases, McVay prior to with the Rams and their backfield, and what we saw out of Cincinnati even, where how they distribute the football out of the backfield in some cases. I like what they've done. They need to execute that. And instead of one player being the offense, I think these guys factor in maybe more than what we've discussed, but they factor in as part of the piece to the entire body of work, more so than the attention and the football and chain mover, so to speak. Henry was doing a lot. There's a lot to put on a running back, which was the face of the offense. That's not the case anymore. And I think that ultimately allowed you to spread the football around a lot more than what you were doing.
I think that's it's a good segue to the next part of what Walter said that I think has us all taking note, because again, we have our eye test about Levis, but all that you just said, right? So much was centered around Henry and what you can get off of the defense cheating towards Henry.
Yes.
Now you have a very different way of going about it, and you've got a very young quarterback that you're asking to make that adjustment and maybe have more on his plate. Maybe they're going to throw it more than they have in the last several years, since Henry has had them be one of the most run-oriented teams in the league, if not the most in some of those years.
Sure.
So can he do that? Walter doesn't have an optimistic outlook from his numbers. And again, it's not his opinion. This is what the analytics people do. Yeah. He had Levis more in the Bryce Young category, of very low in their key metrics. And all of us kind of looked at each other and said, wow, that's a little harsh based on some of the flashpoints that we saw. We saw some – I thought Levis, to be fair, flashed way more in certain games than Young ever did. And, of course, Young was playing for a flat-out awful team. But I just didn't see much from Young last year. I saw enough from Levis that has me hopeful. The analytics department, at least at ESPN, does not agree.
And I think, I'd love to know what the analytics department said about Levis coming out of the draft when Mel Kiper had him
he admitted that they had the Texans 32nd in this same metric last year. And, of course, Stroud proved them all wrong. And he's first to say, these are just the numbers. This is not science every time. We're not right every time.
But it's also the 30,000-foot view that maybe we don't discuss more of, But, so maybe this plays into what the numbers are telling him. Callahan came in and was glowing, right, about the one pass to Burks against the Falcons in his first start, right, where he drops it in the bucket against two defenders while there's a defender right in front of him bearing down on him. You got another defender coming from the side, and he lets it loose on a pass where there's no way he could have seen Traylon Burks and where the ball was going to go. He knew where the ball needed to be, but there's no way he could have seen that route develop, but he still let it fly. They want to reel in the let it rip aspect of Will Levis. And maybe there are some throws that he got away with that maybe analytically or the numbers say the percentage chance of that being caught, which Burks didn't catch the pass, or the percentage chance of that not being a turnover or a poor play for you are, higher than what the result was on the field for that particular play for Levis. Maybe that's factoring in. Again, that's giving the numbers benefit of the doubt. I just think he has more weapons around him. And the big if J.C. Latham is the left tackle of this team, and there's no question about it. He should be much improved from that. Now, I like his attitude. I like his willingness to tweak some things with whatever mechanically they want to work on with him. And I think the other thing is he's taking the receivers and part of the offense out to a retreat between now and training camp. I think that's another leadership step for him. I like what I've seen from Levis, despite whatever has held him back from being a first-round pick or being a top 10 pick or being the quarterback that everyone was raving about, and then all of a sudden they weren't, but Kiper was still on board with, and it's almost, he's a backup quarterback now. I think that's far from it, and I think that also factors in the closer view that we had than maybe the attention that was paid to Levis over the course of a season since he made his first start. And I don't blame a lot of people for not watching a ton of Titans football last year, but that also factors into sometimes, you take the numbers, but you also have to add the other ingredient of what's realistic, what were the expectations, who was playing in front of him, and who was he throwing the football to. And in many cases, those answers are not NFL satisfactory at all. And we still sit here and think that he's got a lot more in the tank than what maybe some of the other quarterbacks that have been through that door over at their practice facility have been able to produce.
Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Hut, appreciate you as always. We'll catch up with you next Wednesday.
Yeah, I look forward to this each week, guys. Have a great rest of the week.
Awesome. Thanks, Hut. You too. Jonathan Hutton, he is the absolute best. We'll continue this conversation. We have a ton of phones on Traylon Burks, so we are right to you coming up next. Again, Trevor Maddich on Jared Stillman's show yesterday saying he was disgusted by Traylon Burks' effort in practice yesterday. D-mase saying that's irresponsible of Trevor Maddich to say that. So we'll write to you coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Give you a comparison with Calvin Ridley, wide receiver. He was running about a 3/4 speed route against the air, where he lined up on the left side, came up about 15 yards, and then turned around and did a little comeback route. About 3/4 speed, no defender was there. He extended his strides as if he were selling to that imaginary defensive back that he was going to blow right past him on a vertical route before he got to the top of his route and came back down. You could see that mentally he was running that route full speed to the end of it, even though physically it was only 3/4 speed. And when Traylon Burks goes in there, he'll run the beginning of the route hard, and then here comes the ball, and he's practicing to fumble. He's practicing to get hit and just go down where he is. You can't tell me that when you get into a game, you catch the ball and you're going to turn it on, because you devolve to the level of your habits.
That was Trevor Maddich on with Stillman and Company yesterday. Again, Trevor Maddich saying he was disgusted by Traylon Burks' effort in practice yesterday.
No, I was talking to Nick.
I was just telling him, I was like, what the hell does D-ball mean? At the very end, he said D-ball.
Yeah,
Can you play it again?
Yeah.
Just the ending?
It on, because you devolve.
Devolve.
I thought I heard
Instead of evolve.
Yeah, I thought he said
devolve.
I thought he said D-ball. I was like,
yeah,
what,
I'm like, what is
D-ball?
D-ball?
I hope he's not getting D-balled
You could say
after 3
you
bad years with the
revert. You
Titans.
revert back to
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
habits,
habit.
which that's a very sound teaching principle. I agree with that in
Sounds
general.
like medieval torture if you're getting deballed.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a good thing.
You don't want to get deballed. This is not a vet clinic.
Somebody's
My
head is on the
goodness.
chopping block. I don't want that. No way. We didn't live in those times anymore.
Devolve, rather. But we've got a bunch of reaction on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So I want to get right to you. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation. Now, Indy Ben came for D-Mase early, and he has responded. Indy Ben says, you're not being delusional, Derek, but you can't say that he's not been a bust to at least some degree, considering he was a mid-first round pick, and this is year 3, and he hasn't shown much of anything. Heck, Alec Pierce on my own squad. Oh, Indy Ben, the Colts! has been a bust to some degree, but he was a second rounder.
Listen, people are going to determine what their level of a bust is. Everybody will. And it's all predicated on where you were drafted. If you were drafted the first overall pick, and if you don't play up to the standards of that pick, then people are going to say you're a bust. You could have just been a okay NFL player, but people are going to, characterize you as a bust because you were the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So people, however you classify a bust, it is what it is. To me, until they say he's done, until they are done, and this will be the last year, they're going to give him one last shot at this. This will be his last shot. If he doesn't get it done here, then it's a bust for the Tennessee Titans. I have no problem with saying that whatsoever. But he still has an opportunity. It hasn't gone the way that nobody expected it to go. He's been on the field, but he's been off more than he's been on. And it just hasn't come together for him. Mind you, he's worked through 2 offenses, and he's worked through 3 quarterbacks. But that's life in the NFL. That's what you got to do. You got to find a way to make it all work. I've always said I can work with anybody. As long as there's a level of respect there, I can work with anybody. As long as we have one goal in mind and there's a level of respect there, then we can work together. I may not like you after we leave this building, but hell, we're all going in the same direction. We're trying to win. That's all I need. So, listen, Indy Ben, you're right. He hasn't. I think we've all established that
Nobody's
Traylon
denying
exactly that he hasn't played up to the level of his draft. But he has one more year to figure this out, at least with the Titans. And if he doesn't, we don't have to worry because we won't be talking about him no more. Why? Because he won't be on this team no more. So, but you're right, Indy Ben. Listen, he hasn't produced, and no one can get around that.
Michael and Madison says, I hope that's not what they meant when they said Traylon has that dog in him. Ricky W texts it, or comments on the YouTube chat rather, about Traylon Burks and says, I wonder how Caroline would feel if she was just starting out and her boss only let her go on the air for 10 minutes a week. That's the treatment that Burks has gotten. And then when she finally did get her 10 minutes for the week, she stumbles over her words a little bit, so then she only gets 5 minutes next week. There are so many things flawed with that comparison. First and foremost, Traylon Burks is not just starting out. This is Traylon Burks' third year in the NFL. Is he a 15-year veteran? No, he's not. But this isn't like this is his first practice as a rookie. Like Traylon Burks, this is his third year. And year 3, you need to be a part of this offense when you're a first-round pick and it's your third year. The second thing is, it's not that Traylon Burks just hasn't been getting opportunities. He hasn't been on the field. And again, I'll reiterate, some of that's not his fault, but it's the fact. So it's not just that the coaching staff he was on the field every single play and was open on every single play, and the coach said, hey, Will, don't throw him the ball because we don't want Traylon to succeed. That's not the case. He just hasn't been available. His fault or not, it's the truth.
I think there's also been a lot of that time. Like he had 2 major things happen last year that had to do with injury. The day, we all remember exactly, we were on the show on the air when everybody started tweeting, oh my God, Traylon's down, right? Because up until then, there was more positive stuff about Burks than there ever had been, right? Throughout his whole rookie year. The whole talk of training camp is he looks really good. He's catching everything. He's dominating every practice. All of us in a grain of salt, but we were taking note. And then that play happened in Minnesota. He was not the same. We didn't know how long it was going to take. I think there was a lot of speculation that he came back earlier than he should have. You rushed it, which happens a lot. And then, of course, in Pittsburgh, he got knocked out of the game. So that's 2 major, major things that happened that had a lot to do with the numbers that we saw. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all of the other questions that we have aside, right, of whether when we do see him on the field, what are we seeing? We're not seeing dominance. He was on the field for 11 games, but I think there were a lot of games in there that he wasn't fully 100%. He certainly wasn't in the game plan a whole lot, and so there's a lot of unanswered questions.
I think what the texter was alluding to is not necessarily, I don't think it was a he, right? Or whatever. I mean, pronoun, person. Just person, okay? Person. I think what the person was saying is the person was equating it to not like one instant, like 1 or 2. The person was taking this 3 years. It ain't kind of summed it up in what if Caroline just started out, then they gave her 5, they gave her 10, they gave her 5, and then it's like I think the texter was saying they try to sum his career up in that little snapshot. Of what they were saying about you as far as getting any time on the air. So I don't think it was just meant for like right now. I think it was taking his whole career. And because I've said this, and this is nothing new. Again, if you've been listening to our show, which I know you have, I've always said that, one, Traylon needs to be on the field more. But in being on the field more, when he's there, y'all need to target him. Y'all need to make him a part of the offense. And I don't think they ever did that consistently, that coaching staff. Why they didn't, I don't know. But I can tell you, they didn't make a conservative effort each and every game to make him a part of the offense. That kid would be floating for quarters,
How much of a factor do you think that it was Will Levis as a rookie coming in and trusting DeAndre Hopkins?
That had a lot. And I'm telling you, that had a lot to do with it, especially because Traylon was on and off the field with his injury.
He didn't have that same
exactly.
chemistry.
He didn't have that same chemistry. You build more chemistry when you're able to be on the field with someone for a long period of time. He wasn't on the field with Traylon much because Traylon was in and out of the lineup. And then when he was in the lineup, they didn't make it an effort to get him the ball. So much so, as I told y'all before, when Vrabel says, we don't target anyone, he must think he talking to somebody that don't know the sport. He's trying to fool y'all and try to tell y'all, which he really ain't fooling y'all.
There might be a good bit of truth
Exactly.
to that.
Like, oh, I'm going to tell them this because they don't know. No, they know, but some of them just ain't going to say anything. I'm going to say something.
Like when you told me that they didn't have a problem pass protecting last season.
Exactly.
Like, don't
Absolutely.
pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, Mike.
Everybody know y'all got a problem with pass protection. And everybody knows that you target guys that you want to target. That's just how this league works. You didn't make a conservative effort until that was said. And then the very next game that you said you weren't going to target, you don't target him, what happened? That first half, you target him like 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. So don't tell us that. That's all I'm saying is that in that situation Traylor was in, especially with the quarterback, when you're not out there as much, then you're going to defer to the guy that's out there all the time, D-Hop. And D-Hop, he deserves everything he gets because he put up numbers. So if he's out there, you need to get him the damn ball. He built up a rapport with D-Hop because D-Hop is always out there. He trusted D-Hop. He didn't have much trust in Traylon. Why? Because Traylon wasn't out there. He didn't build that trust. And then when he was out there, they didn't make an effort to try to get him the football. So I think that was a part of what was happening last year. He just deferred to somebody that was out there 100% of the time.
And there's one instance in particular that I'm thinking of. I believe it was the Houston game where Traylon Burks was wide open and Will Levis hit DeAndre Hopkins instead and it got intercepted or deflected, or I don't remember exactly what it was. But I mean, that was an instance where I feel like Will Levis just kind of panicked, where Traylon Burks could have been targeted, but it was a rookie panic. I'm getting pressured. I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. I'm going to defer to the guy that I'm comfortable with, so on and so forth. But yeah, you're right. Traylon Burks did not get targeted very much toward the end of the season. Chris in Lewisburg texts in, says, I'm not saying that Burks is a bust yet, but multiple first-round busts by J-Rob has contributed to the Titans' fall from worst to first. Totally.
And does Burks unfairly maybe get thrown in there because it's like, oh boy, here's the next. We got Farley, we got Isaiah Wilson. Here's the next one. Yeah, I do.
But it's not really unfairly,
happen.
Willie. It's not really unfairly.
Whether you want to call him the B word or not, he hasn't.
Yeah.
He hasn't done what he was drafted to do.
There's a lot of fair concern about what's going on, and whether it's going to get better, and that's maybe a small. One of the things that we're curious about with a new coach. Is will it be different with the new coach? And they have also prepared themselves to, if it doesn't get any better, that they have other ways that they're going to be effective throwing the ball, right? They're not putting everything on hold and all their eggs in his basket anymore, which is what they should have done. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
He's got to break through that.
Yeah. Another texter says, can the entire radio station please stop talking about Burks? Fans don't care about the fifth wide receiver because NWI is better. A fifth wide receiver on a bad team with the only way of helping this team is on special teams. He deserves the Caleb Farley type of discussion.
Well, he's the fourth receiver, and he was your first-round pick.
Well, so is Caleb Farley. To be fair, we don't talk about Caleb Farley at all.
Because Caleb Farley is totally different. Caleb Farley hasn't been on the field, period. Maybe a couple of snaps here and there. And then when he was back on the field. And then he has so much other stuff that has gone on. I think people are just like, okay. When he was on the field, he didn't show us much. So we're just going to put that as a side note. Just put it over to the side. If he shows us something, great. If he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised if they cut him after camp, They may not. They may look at it like, listen, we've seen what we needed to see. We're a new coach staff. We're going to move on. But Traylon Burks, we talk about Traylon Burks. Why? Because we've seen the flashes.
Yeah.
We've seen the flashes. If we didn't see the flashes, we would have said, what were they doing? They need to cut him now. But because we have seen the flashes, we're like, okay, just like the organization is probably like, okay, we're going to give it one more shot. And then after that, we're going to see. So that's basically what it is. They see the potential, and they're hoping that he can put it all together, and be a Titan for the foreseeable future.
And the Farley pick felt doomed from the beginning.
Yeah, it did. He came in hurt,
and he didn't play his senior year at Virginia Tech. Or his final year at Virginia Tech.
And I think that's why people are just like, Caleb Farley, just put him over there.
He's a lost cause.
Exactly.
Put him in the Isaiah Wilson category.
He just couldn't stay healthy. Nothing's wrong with him mentally or anything else, at least that we know. But I understand, things have happened in his life, and he's going to have to deal with that mentally, and that's going to be tough for him. But from a physical standpoint, that's where he hasn't been able to show whether he's a good player or a bad player because he's been hurt.
Yeah. We'll hear from Harold Landry at the podium here in just a few moments. Titans just wrapped up practice, so we'll be able to get you some reports from practice, maybe some takeaways from some people who were able to be there. Again, unfortunately, we're not able to be out at practice, but we'll get some practice recap coming up next. Back into your phones. Plus, I keep seeing this reaction in the text line. It comes up like every couple of weeks or so, and I want to put it to bed. We'll do it coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-mase. Tune into 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on the Louisville Bats at home. Pre-game at 6:20 p.m., first pitch at 6:35, with coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
Hey, this is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. And I want you to know you're not alone in this boat, okay? There are a bunch of people that go through this each and every year. So I'm gonna give you a resolution here, okay? You set your resolution, I'm gonna give you one. At Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understand the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. See, I'm giving you options now, all right? Cool Springs MD, their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Lodge, Jeffrey Lodge, and it addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you, no one else but you. Connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. I'm going to reiterate that, just for you. Okay? So Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Caroline, Willy, D-mase. Come play with 1025 The Game and do some good at the same time. You're invited to the 615 Open on June 20th at Hermitage Golf Course. Come golf with celebrities on a beautiful course with all proceeds going to Souls for Souls, who helps local kids in need. This is going to be so much fun, and I cannot wait to see you there, so get more info at 615open.com. I don't believe practice has wrapped up quite yet. We'll get some more reports as practice finishes up, and we'll keep you updated with everything that we hear, who was there, who did what, who didn't do what, so on and so forth. But first, Willy, this betting scandal in Major League Baseball. Obviously, we can go back a couple of months ago in early spring with Shohei Ohtani and the interpreter, $17 million that was being used to bet from an account, and it was money from Shohei Ohtani's bank account. Ultimately, it was found that his interpreter will go to Japanese prison for 33 years for being caught guilty for embezzling this money from Shohei Ohtani's account. Now, fast forward to just a couple of days ago, a player that, like a guy in Major League Baseball, a guy that's not, an everyday name, most recently with the San Diego Padres, got the life ban. Got fully Pete Rosed for betting on games when he was injured, betting on Pirates games while he was playing for the Pirates, but injured at the time. It doesn't sit right with me. None of this really does. Ohtani situation.
It's a little fishy.
The timing of it, basically announcing that Tucupita Marcano is banned for life, along with a couple of other guys that I don't think have even played in the majors. They got these guys. So it's like, we got these guys. Oh, by the way, here's the closure and the statement from Ohtani.
Announced the same day that the life ban was announced?
Basically, within 24 hours of each other. I don't know if it was the exact same day, but it's close. They kind of throw the stories together. Major League Baseball, I guess, has now concluded their investigation into it, and they had it in a nice little tidy little, there is no evidence that Ohtani bet, let alone bet on baseball. Okay. But Ohtani then releases a statement. It's hard to know. I just would love to hear somebody have a conversation with Ohtani and just ask a few questions. And if he's more comfortable doing it in Japanese, then let's do it in Japanese, and let's translate, and let's get some answers here. Just because, we're all concerned for every sport. Every sport's nightmare is, who's the next guy that's going to get caught gambling? We're taking all this money from the gambling companies. It's legal, so it is a cash cow. But going with that, you really worry about the next person, and next time it may not be Tucupita Marcano. It could be somebody with a much bigger name that gets thrown out. That's the fear, I think, of all the sports, because that's coming. It's going to happen someday. Everybody's human. There are people that get addicted to gambling. They get themselves in a hole, and if you're gambling legally, they have all of the data. They're going to catch you. The ironic part is the hardest way for you to get caught is probably doing it through the illegal bookies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if that's what people are going to end up doing, but it just stands to reason. It's so much more easy and accepted to gamble, but you set yourself up, if you're these sports, to have people asking a lot of questions or worried, or you set yourself up for a possible scandal down the road. And I'm not saying it happened here with Ohtani, but I think we're all sitting there going, how in the world did a guy take $17 million from a close friend, and nobody tipped Ohtani off throughout the whole process for years, saying, hey, Shohei, you're missing a lot of money here. You realize all of this is leaving your bank account? Nobody knew?
I understand he's an incredibly wealthy man, but $17 million, even for the wealthiest of people, I understand it's a drop in the bucket. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, no, you got to understand, too, it was pre-big contract.
Yeah, and
it was pre this huge contract that he got
with the Dodgers. Yeah, he had a pretty big one with the Angels, but not the big one.
The big
that
one
he's on now. So he was making a little less money at the time.
But still, a little less
Yeah.
is.
And he was
also
getting plenty of endorsements.
still
I mean,
hurts
he's
millions.
got countless. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, $17 million to him isn't the same as $17 million to most humans.
It should be.
But $17 million is still $17 million. If
Yeah.
you're doing your job and you are anywhere, he's got to have somebody, just the regular bank clerk, watching this, right? I think we all have a bank account with somebody that if there's a weird charge, somebody calls you and says, "Is this your charge?" And maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Especially because,
But
correct me if I'm
$17
wrong,
million?
But sports betting is not legal in the state of California.
Right.
correct?
That's another.
It is
Which
That's
is
another
where
part.
Shohei has been since the
Yeah.
beginning.
That's
of
where.
his
That's how
career.
this all got uncovered.
So it's not going to be a deposit or a withdrawal from insert sports book here. It's going to be what, cash withdrawals?
Right. That's
wire
what ESPN
transfers?
got wire
transfers.
transfers of $4.5 million. That's what.
Well,
and
that
it
was
had his name
Ohtani.
on it. That was Ohtani's
Ohtani
money.
was trying to, I guess I think they said he legally said that he was going to pay off Ipe Mazahara's debt.
Right, but that's when they figured out that we can't go with that story because
Yeah.
that implicates him.
That's illegal.
So then all of a sudden it was he stole from me.
But didn't they put the story out that he did it?
At 4 in
Yes.
the morning during the broadcast of
Yes.
the Padres and
These
that,
are- this
that
is the
doesn't
other
make
big
sense.
question.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Because I think all of us would think it's much more logical for as close as those two were together every day for years, hired by him to come over from Japan. They knew each other in Japan for a long time. That it would make much more sense to all of us saying, okay, my buddy, I've got the money. I can cover you. I'll do it for you. Get some help. But in the meantime, here's X million dollars to cover. That would make much more sense than he stole everything from me. And much more sense than him saying that and then switching to, oh no, he stole all that money from me.
Yeah.
Now, has he ever,
Math ain't
Shohan,
mathin'.
No.
has he ever sat down for just say like people asking him questions? Have he done that?
No.
Well, for this situation,
Yeah, for this
no.
He just
situation.
released a statement.
He
right?
released a statement with his new interpreter like 2 days after this happened.
See
when he
that?
came back.
See, that's the problem too. Like they've protected him. Like if you didn't do anything, if you say you didn't have no knowledge of this happening, why can't then reporters, journalists be able to ask you questions? If that indeed, if you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I know when it first initially came out, it was no questions. We're just going to make a statement. So I knew about that, but I was wondering, was there any other time that he was able to sit down with journalists, reporters, and say, well, Shohan, why did the questions that need to be asked?
And
I guess
I'm not sitting here
before-
saying he's a scumbag or anything like that. I just wonder how that
fishy.
happens.
Yeah.
But does somebody, if he's got nothing to hide, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, did anybody from your finance department ever call you and say, you're missing a lot of, you've got a lot of transactions here that are going somewhere?
And
forget about where it's going or anything, but
It's
you're
just
missing
going somewhere,
$17 million.
But has the baseball world, for whatever reason, have they moved on from it?
Yeah.
That's completely wrong.
They have now closed
That's
the book
completely
on it.
wrong
Well, that's
then.
what they came out with yesterday or today. Say we have concluded our investigation. Their word is there is no evidence that he bet, and I guess
I'm
that's all
saying like when I'm
that's
saying
all
the
they
baseball
care
world,
about. Really,
I mean the reporters and
Yeah.
journalists, have they stopped since they've heard that from? Okay, is
that's
it
the-
I
now
don't
have
know
they
about
stopped?
journalists, but I think the
That's the
Major
key
League
is-
Baseball's message is we're done. We're moving.
Oh,
on
of course,
from it.
I can
Yeah.
see why their
Yeah.
message would be
Oh,
that
yeah.
way.
That's-
Absolutely.
That two of their number one fears: one, losing a superstar to a betting ban, and two, games being fixed because
Exactly.
a player is betting on them. And I'm not making the assumption that just because a player is sports bet, they could be sports betting on a hockey game, on a football game, whatever. But that is why the rules are as strict and as kind of funky, frankly, as they are, is because that is the fears. They don't want players, much less Shohei freaking Ohtani, betting on games. But it's weird and it's fishy all the way around. All the way around.
Before we
Because
go to
it
break,
seems like-
I just want to
Go
just
ahead.
clarify something. I told Caroline in the break that it would be Japanese prison to have the option. I'm reading here on multiple outlets saying that 33 years in federal American prison.
Okay.
So this is just clarification.
But
So
they
he
also
will
say
be
he's going to
going.
be deported.
Yeah.
So he's going to be deported
I'm
after
sure.
he serves 30 some odd. He hasn't been sentenced yet, right?
Right. And that's what I'm confused about, too,
Yeah.
because it's a Japanese prison, but also on multiple sources like CBS, ESPN, they're saying federal prison, American prison. So I don't know. But I just wanted to clarify
I don't
that.
sense, like, in this statement from Ohtani, you don't get any, like, does he feel at least betrayed by this guy? It's
That's
almost
what I'm
like,
saying. Are you
because
angry
he
with
didn't
this
write
guy?
it.
Yeah.
he stole from me. It's kind of too bad. Okay, we're cool. It's over.
To be so rich
Let's
that
move
you
on.
don't care if your friend steals $17
I
million.
mean, wouldn't you be bitter?
If my
Like,
friend
you
stole
just-
$5 from me, I got a problem.
Come
It's not the $5, the act that you stole it.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, coming up next, we heard from Seth Walder on our show yesterday, ESPN Analytics. He released the ESPN FPI, which was not very kind to the Titans. However way you want to look at it, whatever numbers you want to crunch. But what was the biggest contributing factors, or maybe what are the bigger contributing factors to such a low ranking? And what's our concern level about that number, about that evaluation analytic? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. So a couple of days ago, we kicked the show off talking about ESPN's FPI, the Football Power Index, which uses all of these numbers and analytics and stats of quarterback, defense, special teams, all of these things. ESPN bet over-under win totals, all of these different factors to come up with a ranking. We had Seth Walder on yesterday, ESPN Analytics, who put out the FPI, the Football Power Rankings, or the Football Power Index, rather. Reminder, it's not Seth Walder's power rankings. This is Seth Walder crunching the numbers, putting it into abacus of an analytic number cruncher, and it had the Titans ranked 27th in the NFL. So we had Seth Walder on the show yesterday. And the reason why we had Seth Walder on the show is because we had so many questions about, what the hell does this mean? What does it mean that the Indianapolis Colts are ranked 20th in the FPI at minus 0.2 and the Titans are at 27th at minus 2.7? What does that mean? Is that a massive gap? Is that a small gap? We had Seth Walder on to provide a little bit of context to that number. One thing that we wondered was, well, how much of that has to do with the quarterback? Not just Will Levis. How much does all of the FPI have to do with the quarterback? I don't think it's a coincidence the Kansas City Chiefs are second. They got the best quarterback in the NFL. But this was Seth Walder on our show yesterday on the Will Levis factor of FPI.
I think it has a lot to do with Will Levis. So obviously the young player, and I think that you build in the uncertainty in the fact that there could be significant growth. We've certainly seen that from players. He hasn't played a full season, just 9 starts under his belt, but he had a 33 QBR. That would have been basically in the Bryce Young zone, right? He only had 9 games, like I mentioned, but that's just not where you got to be if you want to expect strong performance. It doesn't mean that he can't turn it around quickly. I mean, Jared Goff, just signed a huge deal this offseason. And I remember after his rookie season, he also played a partial season, and it was miserable. I mean, awful that year. And so you can certainly turn it around after your rookie season. But I do think that Levis is a big part of the reason why the Titans are holding back, because they've obviously added players in other spots this year that I think help the roster overall. But you can only do so much depending on what you get from the quarterback.
So a lot of these lists that we see that are fueled by opinion, and I got nothing wrong with lists that are fueled by opinion. We talk about them all the time. We have our own opinions. A lot of times these lists that are power rankings by opinion, we assume that it's just because nobody thinks Will Levis is worth a damn. Well, this FPI is all fueled by numbers. And frankly, if this is going by Will Levis's numbers, well, that doesn't concern me very much, because Will Levis's numbers were bad last year. 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 33.2 QBR. To compare that to Bryce Young, who I think we can view as probably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year.
Zach Wilson, I would say.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Down there.
Not saying much.
Down there. If Zach Wilson is the comparison, then that might be
Mac Jones.
saying a lot. 33.4 QBR for Bryce Young. So they're hovering around the same area. Now, we know, looking at Will Levis's stats, I would never use Will Levis's stats as an evaluation of his year last year, because we know that there were so many factors working against Will Levis. But just based off of what Seth Walder had to say there about the numbers, Will Levis's stats, the QBR, how much does that change, or maybe not, your perception of where the Titans are in FPI at 27 and Will Levis is, how he plays into that number?
It doesn't change for me how I feel about this team. Top 22, it doesn't change, because I think the top 22, if they can somehow, and we haven't seen it yet, but if they can somehow stay healthy with those 22, then I think they can compete and put themselves in a position for a playoff spot. But obviously injuries are involved, so you got to take that into account. But I think a lot of it is predicated on Will and, what his season was last year, albeit small sample size. And within that sample size, there's other variables in there. Offensive line wasn't good. The passing game, because of the offensive line, was inept. You didn't have consistent, starters on the outside of wide receiver. The only consistent guy really was D-Hop and probably Nick Westbrook-Akine. Everyone else was in and out of the lineup, or you chose not to use them in a way that was beneficial to your quarterback. So, you look at all of that, and then you probably would come up with something different than what Seth's the numbers said about Will, because I'm watching him and I know all the other variables, which the analytics didn't take into account.
Yeah.
So I know we're watching the other variables at play in our face. Well, the analytics are not spelling that out. So, yes, a lot of this is predicated on the quarterback, but there are some nuances within there. Like, if the offensive line is better, I think the quarterback's better. Mm-hmm. They've added him 2 new weapons on the offense. Well, 3 new weapons on the offense. He should be better. So I'm just going to look at it from that standpoint. They've upgraded this team with the starting 22. He should be better than what he was last year. And I'm just basing that on the additions they've added to the roster.
Yeah.
I think the eye test tells us that he flashed better than that. Also, Seth was only honing in on one stat, the QBR, which is an ESPN invented stat, which encapsulates everything that you do, including your running numbers and everything like that. I'm curious why his is so low, honestly. That's really low, 33.2. For example, his passer rating, which doesn't, I think we all agree, Levis can run a little bit. He's mobile, right? He's athletic. But his passer rating is quite a bit better than the guys around him. Like, who are the guys that have the lowest QBR? Well, it was Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, Bryce Young, Zach Wilson, Will Levis. Will Levis's passer rating was higher than all those guys. 84.2 is not anything to write home about as a passer rating, but it is a lot higher than Jones, Young, and Wilson by a good stretch. So,
am I reading this right? That Bryce Young's passer rating was 6.9?
I have 73.7 as a passer
then
rating.
I am wrong. Okay.
Which used to be called the QB rating, but it's really a passer rating because it doesn't. I remember Steve McNair would grade fairly low his early years, but it didn't account for him being the runner that he was.
Exactly.
And then as he stopped running or didn't run as much, and he matured as a passer, his passer rating went way up. And so there's different ways to evaluate a quarterback. I think QBR tells us a lot, but not everything, right? Is a 33.2 fair for Levis? We have to go with it. Seth Walder has to go with it because that's what his whole system is based on, according to him, right? But I think Levis, to be fair, probably is better than that number. When we watched him play every week, I think he looked better than a guy that 33 points. That's like you said, it's lower than anybody except for Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
and we know how bad Zach Wilson was. Levis didn't seem that bad to me.
There
were some bad games,
totally.
But of course there were some train wrecks at offensive line, and there were some games that just went sideways early where you looked around and said he had no chance. I don't think Zach Wilson. That was the narrative. It was much more, hey, the Jets have good defense. They got some pretty good players at receiver. They don't have a great offensive line, but man, the problem is this guy. The problem is this guy behind center. I don't think we were saying that with Levis.
No. We were saying, in fact, the quite opposite. This defense
we got to give this guy a chance.
As good as we have seen enough to say if the team gets better around the quarterback, then the quarterback will be better. So that's where I think the danger in box score scouting or only looking at the
numbers.
analytics.
Yeah.
The analytics are supplementary to what you watch on a day-to-day basis.
And they're important, but it's not. You have to put it in context.
Because I don't know how much of the Titans Seth Walder watches. and I don't blame him if he doesn't watch any of the Titans. But if when you just go by the analytics, you would look at Will Levis's stats in 9 games, 1,800 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 33.2 QBR, to tack on to 57 rush yards and 2 fumbles. That would be enough for me to say, this guy stinks. This guy's not a starting quarterback in the NFL, but I know how up and down that season was. I know how he had unreliable pass catchers and really a revolving door at wide receiver. I know how horrendous the offensive line was. I know that Will Levis was thrown in the middle of the season after Ryan Tannehill got hurt. All of these factors that work against Will Levis and explain why the numbers weren't very favorable for him. Now, that is not to say that he is just some, elite quarterback just waiting to spread his wings and fly. That is not for me to say, okay, well, the offensive line and the pass catchers are upgraded, so he's going to be, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That's not to say that I don't know if that's going to happen. But it's at least enough for me to look at the FPI with a little bit of a grain of salt to know how much of a factor Will Levis's sheer stats and numbers were.
And as D-mase pointed out, it's not nothing. It's, if he had 3 games and his QBR was 33.2, then I would say that's not enough of a sample size. 9 games is a decent sample size, but it's still a small sample size. If he were to have one more really good game, that QBR would probably have the capability of going way up in one game because he hasn't played that many games. So he played more games less games than a lot of these guys that we're talking about. Pickett, who they've cast off, right? He's gone. Mac Jones, gone. Zach Wilson, gone. Like these are guys. I mean, Bryce Young only because he was the first pick in the draft. Obviously, they're not moving on from him after 1 year. But 33.2 most of the time has people saying, can they get it? Can this guy be the guy? So that's where I think Seth is coming from. Is he's in that danger zone of you got to show me more than that. But it is only 9 games.
And it was 9 games on a roster. That wouldn't
they had trouble. They were having all kinds of problems.
And he was constantly under duress. Those are the kind of things that we watch the team on a day-to-day basis, and I don't expect the national media to watch the Titans in as much depth and detail as we do as local reporters and local radio hosts, but it at least adds a little bit of context. I did think one thing that was really interesting that Seth Walder clarified was the difference between the Colts and the Titans. The Colts ranked at 20th, so it's not like anyone expects the Colts to be absolute world beaters, but 20 versus 27, minus 0.2 for the Colts, FPI, minus 2.7. Now, Seth Walder clarified that would mean that if the Colts and the Titans played today, it'd be a 2.5-point spread. Makes sense to me. It's a 2.5-point differential. But since he clarified, look, the quarterback has a lot to do with it. How much did Anthony Richardson? Why are Anthony Richardson's numbers so much more favorable than Will Levis's when there is such a small sample size of Anthony Richardson? This is what Seth Walder had to say.
I think that's it, right? Like even in the small sample that we saw of Richardson, I think we all probably saw a higher level of play than we saw from Levis and definitely higher upside. So like whether Richardson pans out or not, I don't know, but we probably are more bullish on him outside of his health today than we were on draft day. And I think you can see the possibility that he could be their franchise guy. I'm not saying Levis can't, but the probability I think that Richardson works out is quite a bit higher than it is for Levis. So, yeah, there's arguments for – I think it really does come down to that. Both teams have some nice players, but like outside of quarterback. But to me, that is like a very easy difference to make at QB.
And see, that's interesting because Richardson didn't play. He really did have a tiny sample size.
4
so
games.
He's venturing out of analytics when he's saying, I see more upside. Because I think we could all sit there and watch Levis against the Falcons, and we pick his 2 or 3 best games and say, looks like he's got upside to me. I think he's got upside. But Richardson, we're only going on a very small sample size. And I don't, what did he have? I don't remember. He played 4 games?
He played 4 games. Had like 500 and something yards.
He had 1 or 2 really good games. Yeah. He had 1 or 2 shaky games, I guess. But that's a little bit of a leap of faith. That's not based on numbers that he put up in those 4 games.
I think it probably here's, I think, what works in Richardson's favor is that he only played 4 games, and if you sum it all together, it was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
It was okay, and with the way that they were playing, you project that he would have gotten a little bit better. Why? Because Shane Steichen would have, brought him on very, very slowly, used the run game more than anything to try to bring his quarterback along. So he didn't have that game like Will Levis had, in Pittsburgh. He didn't have those type of games. Now, he did throw 2 interceptions. I think he threw 2 interceptions. No, he threw 1 interception, and that was his first start. Yeah, first start against Jacksonville. He threw a touchdown, too. But after that, it just seemed like they were bringing him on very, very slowly.
Because that next game was when he got concussed.
Yeah, Houston.
Against Houston.
Yeah, but then he came back and played against the Rams and the Titans.
And then he left the Titans game
and then
early.
He left
with
the Titans games
injury.
early. Yeah, and he was doing fairly well in that game before he left. So I think
and his
they look
QBR
at
is
that.
45. So that's not good. 45
It's
is not
like,
good.
but it's something I guess they can look at and say it's a small sample size. Again, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either.
How much of Seth Walder's optimism that Anthony Richardson is going to work out has to do with the fact that he was, the 4th overall pick?
I think that has something to do with it, and Shane Steichen.
And I think Richardson is such a physical.
He's a monster.
He wows you. He wows you physically. And he's young, so I think there is a thought. I think there's also a Shane Steichen credibility. But, see, I was curious about that answer that he gave you because I thought it's all about the numbers. And he kind of drifts from that a little bit on that. Now, if you tell me, well, Minshew played pretty well, which he did.
Yeah.
And the roster is overall better, I'm buying that as more of a reason why there's a separation between the Colts and the Titans. To me, that's what an analytic person would stick to, and not telling me that, I think there's more upside with Richardson. How does an analytics person tell you about upside based on 4 games? I don't think the statistics tell you that there is he's going to break out. There's not enough games to really be able to tell me that.
Same thing with the Bears. The Bears, I believe, are 19 on FPI. Well, the Bears have a quarterback that hasn't taken a snap in the NFL. I understand it's Caleb Williams, and I understand he was the 1st overall pick in the draft, and then they had the 9th overall pick in the draft, and Rome Odunze, and everybody's really encouraged about what both of them can be in the NFL, because how could you not be? But that is also a lot of speculation, giving credit to the rest of the Bears roster, what they did in the offseason. They added DJ Moore. They added Montez Sweat. So the roster around the quarterback and the rookie wide receiver is good as well. But still, if quarterback's going to be as big of a factor in this as it seems to be, I think a quarterback that's never taken a snap in the National Football League wouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt, at least analytically.
Well, yeah, but if you also and I'm just looking at what Will Levis, his last 4 games. What did he play? 8?
He played 9 total.
9 games.
Started 9. 3 and 6.
If you look at it, and I'm just going by the QBR. That's all I'm going by. That was his best game. He was at 61.2%. After that,
for
he
an individual
game,
individual QBR.
Yeah, QBR.
Okay.
After that, he went downhill. Every game was he had no more. His next best game was 44.1%. So, in between that,
and just to give people a reference,
Yeah.
Brock Purdy led the league last year in QBR for the season, 72.8.
Okay.
So the top, if you're
72.
over 70, you're
Yeah.
really, really good. If you're over 60, you're in the top. You're in the top 10.
So Will had 1 over 60, and everything else was below 40. But then you look at Richardson. Richardson had 2 over 60, and 2 that were just poor. So
Games he left early, too. Yeah,
games he left early, too. The Titans game he left early, even though he seemed to be doing well
He made
in
a
that
couple
game.
good plays in that game.
Yeah.
And then the first one, his first game against Jacksonville was his first game, period. But in between that, it just seemed like his QBR was average. So I guess
It
they
ended
look
up in
at
the
it
40s, so that
I
would
guess
put
they
him in
look
the
at it
bottom
a little bit
10.
different because Will, he started off hot and he started to go down here after that. But again, we're here watching him, and we know why some of that stuff happened.
Right,
And it was because of the offensive lineman.
For example, the sack rate does affect your QBR, right? How many times you get sacked. And Will Levis got sacked 28 times in the 9 games. 10%.
Got sacked 28 times?
28 times in the 9 games. So that's a 10%. So that stat does reflect. And sometimes it's like, what do you want him to do? Like if you're looking at a lot of those examples, okay, you want him not to get sacked, so he's supposed to just throw it up for grabs. There's a lot of tough decisions a quarterback is forced into when you have no line. That's a big reason why Bryce Young got sacked 62 times. 62 times.
Oh my gosh.
So they do the
He's
percentage.
just a little boy.
The percentage of times
that
you get sacked on the dropbacks, right? And if you're Zach Wilson, even more. He got sacked 46 times, 11.1% of the time he got sacked.
Jeez.
Yikes.
These poor quarter. Get these men some offensive line. My goodness.
But then you look at that in the reverse. You look at Richardson. Excuse me. In his 4 games, 6, 7 times. So 2 per game. Where in the second game he didn't get sacked at all. The first game is what really sort of threw it off. He got sacked 4 times in that game. But then after that, 0, 2, 1. So he didn't have – it didn't affect him like it affected Will Levis.
Yeah.
Some
reports coming in from practice today. Second day of mandatory minicamp. They'll wrap up tomorrow. Leroy Watson, the offensive lineman that the Titans traded a 7th-round pick for the Browns, said it's as an offensive lineman, it's really fun to F people up. Okay, Leroy.
That's what they're there for.
Okay. I like the attitude. Now, there's some dog. There's some dog in Leroy Watson.
That's the meat and potatoes right there.
Yeah.
That is a definition of meat and potatoes in the offensive line.
They're ready to maul somebody.
They're ready to hit somebody. All right, we'll get into some practice reports. We'll continue our conversation. What we heard from Seth Walder, some takeaways of why the numbers are not very favorable for the Tennessee Titans. Pure analytics, no opinion, or at least not a lot of opinion. So we'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Let's talk Zen Sports, people, the new sports book in Tennessee that's bringing sports betting to a whole new level, and I mean that literally, people. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $1,000, no danger first wager. If your first bet loses, check this out. You'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports offers 2 odds on all parlays and boosted same-game parlays for all Tennessee sports teams. That means boosted up to 20% over other sport books in Tennessee. And there's even more good news, people. Zen Sports offers a one-of-a-kind VIP reward program. If you qualify, you earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it, even sport book bonuses. The VIP program is by invite only, people, so you can't come in up here all willy-nilly. If you ain't got a ticket, you can't get in. That's just how it is. So, if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. So, what are you waiting for? The daily same-game parlay boost go quick. So get going and download their app at zensports.com today. That's Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
What do you think Pollard has left at this point in his career?
Yeah, to me, he there is a chance here because he is a guy that, like you mentioned, the metrics, like the advanced metrics, right? And the one that we often use for running backs is something called rush yards over expectation, which is basically saying at the time of handoff, where are all 22 players on the field? Where are they moving? What's their speed? Which direction are they going? And then it makes an estimate as to how far the running back will make it. And then we see which running backs are able to over or underperform that estimate. So last year, Pollard obviously had a disaster season, and it didn't work out for him, and that's why he wasn't as expensive as you might have guessed a year ago, because 2 years ago he was very efficient. I'm trying to pull the number up right now. 2 years ago he generated 226 rush yards over expectation. So that was the third most among all running backs that season. And he was hurt last year. And so I do wonder, there is a world where it was just the injury. You know, he was held back by injury more than maybe we realized, and he gets right back to that efficient play. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with a little bit needing to split the work a little bit more, but maybe that's a thing he can do with Spears. I think there's a world where that happens. At the same time, I would just say, in general, a golden rule is like once a running back has a bad year, bet against them forever. And it sounds harsh, but like it's the reality of the position.
But you can't be any geek off the street.
All right, that was Seth Walder, ESPN Analytics, talking Tony Pollard. We know this is going to be a new look run game. What it looks like exactly, that's what I'm really intrigued to see. We talked to TD about it earlier in the week. He said expect kind of a 50-50 between Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. And I think that's probably what we all expect. Talking about Tony Pollard, looking back at this past season with Dallas, his numbers are not very different. In fact, they're pretty good compared to the rest of his season. 1,000 rushing yards on 252 carries. Of course, 4 yards per carry isn't great. You'd want more from that. 311 receiving yards, right around what it's been the last 3 seasons. The important thing to point out there is, though, before he was splitting reps with Ezekiel Elliott. This past season, he was not splitting reps with Ezekiel Elliott, and his numbers were just about the same. So not the best year for Tony Pollard. But Seth Walder saying there, look, was it because of the injury? Was it because he was the go-to back? Was it maybe just, natural decline? That's Seth Walder saying, I don't know.
That's what's interesting. That's why we have to, if you just said his stats are 252 carries for 1,005 yards, you're like, oh, not a bad year.
Pretty good year.
Not bad. But that is why we have analytics to look at. Just like I had to recalibrate my whole brain because I grew up collecting baseball cards. I would look on the back of the card, and if a guy had 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, I was like, good year. But now they look at a lot further into that. They go way in depth of what did that really mean? How many times were you up there with guys on base? All of these things. That's what analytics is there to do. And Pollard from 2 years ago to last year, from the basic stats doesn't look all that different, but the efficiency was way better 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And last year, for example, he only had one game where he had over 100 yards. And he really didn't, down the stretch, have a whole lot of production at all. And that was when he was hampered by an injury. That's what I think the Titans are betting on, is that a healthy Pollard will have him rebounding some.
And a Pollard with not necessarily a running back too, but Pollard and Tajay Spears as a tandem.
Mm-hmm. I think you got to look at last season, albeit if you just look at the numbers, it was a good season, 1,000 yards, but his yards per carry was down. But I think that's something you had to expect coming off of knee injury the very next season. So you had to have expected, there to be a dip in his production.
Was it an ACL?
I think he had a broken or a fracture in his ankle late that he was playing through.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. I don't know what it was the season before. I'm sure he's had more than one injury, which is kind of where Seth is going with the attrition that happens to a running back over time, and it's hard to bounce back.
Especially coming off an injury, too.
Yeah.
And working your way through that. So I expect, Pollard to be close to the running back he was 2 years ago before the injury. But again, a lot of it is predicated on the offensive line. Dallas had a good offensive line. They made it their business to run the football, and they set up their offensive line that way. The Tennessee Titans are in the process of rebuilding their offensive line. So it may look a little bit different this year again, but I think you will see just from I'm not talking about from a number standpoint, but I think just from watching him, his movements, his ability to possibly break tackles or accelerate, it's going to be better than it was last year because he's one more year removed from that injury that he had to his leg.
The other part of it is the receiving. If you look at 2 years ago, 39 catches for 371 yards, 9.5 yards per catch, much more efficient there. Last year, 55 catches, but only 311 yards. So he had less yards by a good margin with 16 more catches. So yards per catch, 5.7. That's not super efficient coming out of the backfield. So once again, how much of it is injury? And can we see more of a 2022 Pollard, where if he's got Spears, he's a good between the two of them, you get the production that you're looking for. That's the ideal goal, and we'll see if Pollard is healthy enough to do it. And the other part that we haven't discussed, too, is where does Spears look in year two? Mm-hmm. Can he build off of some of the things that he flashed last year?
252 carries for Tony Pollard last year. That's double what he got in 2021. That is far and beyond the most carries he's gotten in a season. In 2020, he got 100. 2021, 130. 2022, 193. 2023, 252 carries.
Yep.
That's a lot. And I think it's clear that Tony Pollard is better as a split back than he is as the number one go-to. I understand that, the Titans are so used to having Derrick Henry as being your bell cow back and nobody's Derrick Henry. It is going to be truly a running back by a duo. And Ben in Cumberland City texts in, says, so after a bad year, you expect a great year because he's our guy now behind this offensive line? Stillman calls this toxic optimism. Did anybody say that Tony Pollard is going to have a great year?
Well, I think that's what we're questioning.
That's what we want to know, is will he be better splitting reps?
I think we're pointing out what they're hoping for, and then we're also pointing out statistically the red flags. Just like Will Levis, we just had a lot of red flags there. DeAndre Hopkins at his age, Boyd. We've gone through this. There are red flags for all these things.
It amazes me how people
we're having a discussion.
We're not. It amazes me though, we're not being what we're saying, and then people totally dismiss what we're saying and claim we're saying something else. I think I just sat here and said that from a number standpoint, it may not look the same, but I said from a movement standpoint, him moving and potentially breaking tackles, I expect that to be better because he's another year removed from the injury. Now, Dallas loved to run the football, and they set up their offensive line in that manner. And I said the Titans are rebuilding their offensive line. So maybe don't expect it to look the same. I don't expect the production to be the same, but I expect him to be closer as far as how he looks. Closer to the back he was 2 seasons ago than last year because he's another year removed from the injury. That's all we're saying, people. We didn't say that he's going to have this outstanding breakout year.
No, he's going to be an all-pro.
Yeah, he's going to be an all-pro. I think I heard Willy say that. He's going to be an all-pro.
Oh, you heard what
Offensive player of the year.
Seth doesn't seem very optimistic about any of this stuff. He's got them 27th, so I don't know where the whole theme is really the pessimism. It's not the optimism.
Toxic optimism.
We're trying to say where is he coming from with this? Why is he saying what he's saying? Why do they have him 27th? That's not the whole theme is that nobody's optimistic.
Yeah.
From the outside, we're trying to figure out, can it be better? What would it take for it to be better? That's a long way from toxic optimism. But Seth's last line there is an interesting one. Historically, once a running back is hurt a few times, you don't tend to see a huge bounce back. That's the biggest thing going forward because there's always a wild card when a guy changes teams anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
How he's going to acclimate to the offense, how they're going to use him and whatnot. But, okay, people, let's stop making up new terms, okay? Let's stop it. Stop it, all right? This whole toxic, what did he say, optimism?
Toxic optimism.
Yeah. What's wrong with being excited about your team? What's wrong with pointing out areas of your team that they've gotten better? I don't understand this. Oh, toxic optimism. I'm sure if you have kids, you use toxic optimism if you want to say that. You're optimistic about the things that this team has done this year compared to last year and the year before that. That's all people are trying to relay here or convey to the listeners.
I think the Bears.
It's not toxic. Whatever Jared said.
Chicago Bears wouldn't have a team if it weren't for toxic optimism.
But I don't even want to use that. I don't even want to use that word anymore, Willie.
You're allowed to have hope.
That's like saying toxic masculinity and all that other stuff. No, let's stop using that stuff. Because it's not. That's not what's going on here. Some people are optimistic about their team, and they have a right to be optimistic. Sometimes they can go a little bit overboard, but this is their team, the Tennessee Titans. If they want to be optimistic about their team, I don't think we've ever got on this show and just was gung-ho every show about the Tennessee Titans. So when you say toxic, I don't even want to say it anymore, okay? Being chipper and optimistic, I don't get what you're trying to say here. You want us to get on the radio and just bash them every chance we can get? Is that what you want? Or do you want us to get on the radio and tell you what we believe our truth is based upon what we're seeing? We never got on this show and lied to you about what we're seeing, okay? We never got on this show saying, yes, gung-ho, the Tennessee Titans, they're going all the way. They're winning the Super Bowl. No, we're being realistic. They've made some changes. They've upgraded the roster, but they still got a lot of work to do. It's okay to say that. It's okay to be optimistic about that. Ain't no toxic about that. I don't know. I don't understand the toxic optimistic. Being optimistic. Is that this new phrase y'all want to run with now? Please, miss me with that crap, okay?
It's realistic.
Miss me with that, man. It's these new. Stop it, people. If we get on here and bash the Titans all day, y'all, why y'all talking about? Y'all just. We're being honest based upon our assessments as a team. Some days are better than the others. Some days are worse than the others. But we're not getting on these airwaves and everything is peachy creamy and we're holding hands and saying kumbaya about the Tennessee Titans. So stop it. Just because one person says it doesn't mean you got to be a sheep and say it too, because it's not that way, especially not on this show. Now, I don't know about the other shows. It's not that way on this show. So please miss me with that toxic optimistic. I'm going to be optimistic when I need to be optimistic, and I'm going to get on the Titans when I need to get on the Titans. That's across the board, Titans, Predators. Only person you can't touch is UC Soros. That's the only person you can't touch. That's the only person I'm going to be optimistic about each and every time. Everybody else, hey, it's fair game.
Sacred cow on this show. More of your phones coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-mase. Derek doesn't want to hear about your toxic optimism.
I mean,
Let's. Derek's
That
had some
phrase,
hardship
yeah.
today. He's
I've
had
had-
some
yes,
hardship
a
today.
lot of stuff.
And
It's
let's
been a
just.
day.
It's been a day,
Yeah.
and I witnessed one in our break room. He had a $5 bill. He put it in the vending machine. It goes all the way in, and then comes all the way back out.
yes.
He tries it again and again, and he says, "Do you have any singles? Do you have anything?" All I happened to have was a $5 bill, so I gave him mine. We traded $5 bills. He puts mine in, goes all the way in, and then comes all the way back out.
At
again.
least it came back.
That's a scene like right out of Seinfeld. You know,
Look
he's
at
at
the
the car
bright side.
dealership.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't
You didn't
eat your
lose
money.
$10.
It didn't eat
Yeah.
your money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Need
talking
no
about, Willie?
money.
At the car dealership, he's just waiting there, waiting. God, I need to get some. I'm hungry. I need a Twix.
Right.
And the guy walks through. He's not a crisp dollar bill. And of course, like, all right, I got to put it in. And then the guy that I guess works on a bunch of cars comes through, gets a Twix. Can I borrow $1? No. But I just I glanced in your wallet. You have a bunch of crisp $1 bills. You saw wrong.
So nobody wants to give me dollar bills. I get it.
I got
Alan
change.
might. Alan might. He's on
Well,
the line.
Alan, come
Phone
on.
lines driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. What's up, Alan?
Oh, I was going to say that I am exceptionally optimistic. But if you can't say toxic, we need another word for that. Would that be hostily?
I think hostile is
I just
reserved
thought it was
for...
your rant was funny. I loved it.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you, Alan. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for your call, Alan.
I just want. I don't want that. I don't want that to be this sort of phrase that everybody goes to, like toxic optimism.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please
let's not
don't do that. Don't because this is what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Anytime we say something good about the Titans more than once, toxic optimism. No, I'm not doing that. Don't call, don't text, no. I don't want to hear the word. I don't want to hear those two words put together.
Well, because we're not going to go all Charles Davis, and I love Charles Davis, and say, I'm
Exactly.
so excited about the Titans because they got Daniel Brunskill and
This guy and
Chika
that guy.
Okonkwo and all these things.
Sneed and
They're-
Louisier.
This season will be defined on all of the quote-unquote swing things. Can J.C. Latham move over to left tackle? Can he be a starting left tackle, and can that be an easy transition for him? I don't know. Can Devondre Sweat stay on the field? I don't know. Can Will Levis take steps forward and be more consistent and look like a starting quarterback in the NFL? We've seen some good, we've seen some bad. A lot of factors in this team, and I know that happens to every team every single year, but specifically this team.
Because it's a rebuild.
And a lot of newness. It can swing one way and it can swing another. And some things can go well and some things might not go well. And the things that go well could dictate the season. The things that don't go well could dictate the season. I don't know. So if you want to be overly optimistic and say that everything's going to be perfect and amazing and sunshine and rainbows, like that is totally your prerogative. It's probably not what's
You're
going
gonna be
to happen.
you're gonna be disappointed.
You're going to be disappointed. You can think that.
But I don't think Titans fans are, show, what that phrase is. They're not. I don't think Titan fans call. All calls we're getting is optimism. I think we're getting a bit of both. We're getting some people that are optimistic about what they've done, and excited about Rand and Brian and Will. And there are some people that are like, listen, he's a first-year head coach. Will's this would be a first year as the permanent starter, game one. The offensive line still has to show. I know they got new pieces, but they got to show that they can get the job done. So whereas you can be optimistic on one hand, but also understanding that, hey, listen, these things need to happen in order for what I'm believing to come true. I understand that this is a process, but I also can be optimistic about potentially what the end goal can be with this team this year, if indeed they stay healthy. That's a big if, the healthy part. If they stay healthy, you can be optimistic about this team not looking like they did last season. If they get hurt, it's a different story. So you can be concerned and optimistic at the same time.
I think that comes back to what I'm looking for. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to win 10 games. I reserve the right to wait to predict what I think their record's going to be, but I'm going to be in that neighborhood of 7 or 8 wins. But it's how they look at the end of the season that is the most important question. Whether they win 7, 8, 9, 10, or 5.
I have a note from the source of the term, Merriam-Webster himself.
Okay.
Says the term's toxic positivity. Not toxic optimism.
Toxic positivity. That still doesn't sound right. I mean, I know that it's a thing, but
Is it better than toxic negativity?
yeah. Is there toxic negativity?
Oh, totally.
Or is anything toxic just that, toxic?
Anything you
Yeah.
discuss, like,
You go too far one
Yeah,
way or
it's
another, it's going to be toxic.
I did
Toxic,
major
okay.
in philosophy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a philosophy class, right?
It could
Is
be.
anything toxic, whether positive or negative?
wouldn't it be good to be positive?
I would think.
I would think too. If
But you
this
can be too
world was
positive.
positive, I don't think you can be too positive.
I think if you say, well, that man across the street who's doing drugs looks like a nice person that could give me a ride. That might be a little toxic.
He probably could, but you may want to call somebody else. Yeah, you may want to call somebody else.
Well, the source of toxic positivity.
Yes.
Stillman and Company is up next. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Be love and love on your people and display a lot of toxic positivity, people. Peace.